The first month. Overcast, mild temperature. An owl turns its head to stare through our window as we awaken. It was 8:58 a.m. on a Tuesday, and once again, it was the sounds of violent seizing on the floor by my bed that awoke me. Stumbling in a stupor to cradle my wife's head and soothe her as her eyes rolled back and joints locked and pulled while her mouth foamed was tough. Finding the opening in her mouth to administer her rescue medication, midazolam, watching the paste coat her gums and hoping that it'll settle her while assuring her I loved her and didn't want to hurt her was always harder. Then came the grunts, the dismal groans as her back arched and her shoulders rolled before her breathing grew slower, labored, and she entered a state not dissimilar to dreaming, but without waking up. Blue flashing lights, paramedics gently moving me aside to administer oxygen and prep her to move to the ambulance. The long drive to the hospital, the slow but steady come around with confusion, and the doctors with well-meaning smiles and pats on the shoulder, assuring me in a calm, collected, and distant tone, "You're doing the best you can, given the circumstances." Somewhere in that hospital ward, I would always see a flicker of something in the darker parts of the halls. Shadows clinging to the last vestiges of darkness that the powerful fluorescent lights could not reach. Never enough to warrant panic, but plenty to invite dread into my body and let it nestle there while I smiled, thanked the doctor, and packed up my wife's things, knowing I'd be back before long, knowing it'd only get worse from here. Amelia is sick. That much is obvious to you all by this point. We'd been having a spirited nerf war in our newly purchased home as a newly hitched couple, fully within the throes of love and in the honeymoon phase of our relationship that had lasted 7.5 blissful years so far. She lost her footing, stumbled, and slurred something before smashing her head on the coffee table and seizing on the floor. For as long as I live, I will not forget the image of her face frozen in total neutrality as her brain bled, nor the sound her skull made as it collided with the mahogany. Doctors would conclude it was a stroke, but the genuine terror lay in their subsequent tests. The stern faces, the high-quality scans showcasing a highlighted mass gripping into the soft flesh of her brain. Amelia has glioblastoma, aggressive glioblastoma. It grows silent, muted in the office as we listen to the doctor run through options of treatment and palliative care. She talks about various kinds of radiotherapy, surgeries with enormous risks, and pills to manage the suffering. I can read her lips, but the tone escapes me. A hum has crept into the room, and a darkness fills the corner of my vision, like someone is pouring oil into my eye sockets. I feel something put stiff hands on my shoulder, and my skin bristles. Before I can react, Amelia's hand is in mine as she speaks.
"No, I won't be needing treatment. We'll do this our own way. Thank you."
She stands up, gently nods in the doctor's direction, and heads for the door. I see the doctor's glasses fog over, and she grabs my wrist suddenly as I leave, her bottom lip trembling as she extends a small card, telling me that if she doesn't want treatment, that's fine, but I could still do something for her, from something she called their extensions branch. I don't have the ability to respond. I merely nod, place the card in my pocket, and take her soft hand as we exit the office. My eyes fixated on her hair tied into blonde and pink space buns as she walks with purpose in her step, humming to herself. It's funny what you focus on when the world falls around you, but it doesn't grant you respite from the uncomfortable truth laid bare before you. Amelia has mere months to live. My wonderful, one-of-a-kind wife has months to live. The second month. Dark clouds, rain batters the windows, failing to deter a black beetle that crawls across our windowsill, steadfast in his job that remains unknown to us, his iridescent shell glistening in the faint light of my bedside cabinet, gripping a small twig in its mandibles. I carefully pick him up and deposit him into an old shoe until the rain passes. Dedication should always be rewarded. Everyone talks about how their loved one lights up a room when they walk in, or is the life of the party, or some other extroverted phrase, But that has never been Amelia. She's always been a woman with two sides to herself. The calm, collected, and dignified side that the outside world sees. One where she can keep people at arm's length and ensure she never has to be more than the wallflower if she so wishes. Then there's the side I, her family, and limited loved ones know. The rambunctious, witty, eccentric woman who spent her life going through phases of interest in so many subjects that it makes an ordinary guy like me have his head spinning. From cryptozoology to architecture and Roman history, Amelia dove in head first and allowed herself to be absorbed by the rich tapestry of knowledge, regaling me with all her findings during the day, and sometimes even acting out fun plays or activities from the time periods and subjects. It was never a dull moment with her. The first year I met her, she was a lover of surrealist films, art, and music. We bonded over my Twin Peaks hat and a love of vocalist Mike Patton. Spent our first date watching Eraserhead before she took my hand in hers and told me,
"This is it, Jasper. I no longer need to search."
and by God, if I didn't believe her. I want you to understand who she is, what she means to me. Because otherwise, I fear my decision-making the past 9 months will not fully be appreciated, or worse, scorned. The first month involved a lot of pent-up emotions on my end, and stoic optimism on hers. She was always a spiritual person who ostensibly believed that while there was no particular God who would answer her prayers, that we didn't come to Sturgeon for nothing, and she trusted in the powers that be to determine what would happen next. Easy for her to say when she wasn't the one witnessing the steady decline of the one she loved. Countless days spent watching her muscles weaken, her cognitive abilities grow worse, and her memory falter. Never did I think I'd be telling my 32-year-old wife that I was her husband and not an intruder that she needed to fear, nor a teacher coming to discipline her. Those nights were the hardest on us both. I slipped out one evening when her diazepam had knocked her out for the night, and while sobbing in the car, punching my steering wheel as the heavy rain muffled my cries, I remembered the card I'd been given. Black with red velvet letters that danced off beautifully crafted stationery. A small lotus flower on one side, a painted skull on the other. A simple question adorning the top of the card. Do you want more time? I swallowed, wiping my face free of tears and scoffing at the notion. Who doesn't? Beneath the question was an address and the title of the business card. Dr. D.D.'s Life Extension Service, a proud subsidiary of St. Martin's Hospital. Finally, what I assumed the motto with an official medical seal affixed at the bottom. Moments are finite, but memories are infinite. That was all I needed in order to make the trip. I had nothing else to lose. I took one look out the window at the silent bedroom where my wonderful wife slept, hopefully, peacefully. I called my mother-in-law and asked her to keep watch. Said I had to make a pickup for Amelia's new meds and jetted off into the night. The trip was a blur. I spent the entire time with fingers drumming the steering wheel to a beat only I could hear, lights flashing by like checkpoints on a racetrack as I hurtled down the main roads until a small sign jutted out of an intersection. Myopic Road, south. Sturgeon Central, northwest. Dr. D.D.'s Life Extension Service, east 2 miles. Turning my car onto the dimly lit street, I knew that no matter what I encountered or trials I faced, it would be worth the effort. If it means giving Amelia more time, anything was. The converted shipping container sat in the center of a large clearing that I assumed was once a parking lot. Rust still steadily overtook the sides of the structure, white paint interspersed with bright red lettering, and a neon sign flashing its availability kept the building and parking lot area lit. But the greater area was still enshrouded in a thick darkness that felt far too imposing for its own good. Still, I was determined, and no amount of threatening aura would deter me. I parked the car and stepped towards the small door affixed to the side like a sewn-on appendage. A splinterless wooden material with black and gold patterns swirling in on themselves, coalescing at the center where a peephole and a large door knocker sat. I sighed against the cold air and lifted it to knock before the door swung open and a man beamed at me from behind a pair of circular sunglasses and a modified plague mask.
Ah, You're here for the pierogi?
His voice was soft, pleasant, and inviting, a smell of cinnamon and ginseng wafting from the interior. No, I'm here for it.
Of course. Nobody is ever here for the pierogi anymore. Mrs. Langston always gets the most customers. The last time I ever share a recipe in the community amateur cooking group. I know what you're here for, Mr. Lambert. Come on in and sit in any seat you like.
He hastily shut the door behind me before hurrying off to the far end of the container, where a stack of shelves and books sat, before I could even ask him how he knew. Instead, I turned my attention to the consultation area he'd compiled, where, predictably, just one chair sat opposite to his.
What is your spouse's affliction?
He called, muttering occasionally.
No, not that one. Maybe this?
While busy hands rummaged for unseen concoctions. I realized I hadn't even said it out loud to another soul since she got diagnosed. Glioblastoma, stage 4. She has at best 3 months. The words spilled out of my mouth like ash, the bitterness on my tongue enough to make me vomit with anger.
I see. What makes your wife happiest?
He held a blue beaker up to the light, and something behind his thick circular shades glistened before he shrugged and cast it aside. When I didn't know how to respond, he tilted his head back.
This works if I understand your connection. I mean, really understand it. So please, humor me.
Well, I mean, she loves to travel, strawberry ice cream, rainy days, and...
No. What makes her truly happy? This is your wife, not a bio on a corporate profile.
I thought for a moment, and my legs started shaking. Nowadays, it's the first precious minutes or hours before sickness overwhelms her, where she can think, be coherent, and be her normal self. When she wakes up, she's strong enough in mind and body to cut her bonsai tree in place. She spends time with her lizards and even talks to them. She's not burdened by the pain, the vomiting, or the notion that at any given moment she could drop to the floor and into a world where she's alone, vulnerable, and unable to get help. Her happiness comes from the luxury of not thinking about death for a time, but before... I can see the image burned into my head. Not a memory, but a moment that would never come to pass. An event so desperate to bring itself into existence, and yet undeniably so far from my grasp. It was the prospect of becoming a mother. I swallowed and felt shards puncture my throat. I hated this. The doctor found what he was looking for, and with a book in hand, walked over to the desk, placing the potion and book down in front of me as he sighed.
I see. And what would you give up to ensure that happiness endures?
He placed his hands together in front of me pensively and studied me as I shifted in my seat. Anything. I would give anything to see her better, to have more time and carve out a niche for us. I'm not ready. She is not ready. He tilted his head to the side and tapped his index fingers together.
You're sure? Have you discussed this with her? I don't think I need to point out that this extension plan is not orthodox, Mr. Lambert.
Nothing in Sturgeon is orthodox, Doc, but no, I haven't discussed it with her. Right now, Amelia can't tell day from night some days, and others are spent keeping it together long enough to make those good days mean something. She doesn't need to add more to her plate. It's my job to help her, and that's what I'll do, come hell or high water. There was a pause. His hands lowered, and he opened the thick leather tome to a specific page, turning it towards me and gesturing for my hand. Upon handing it to me, he pricked my finger.
Last question. What scares you, Jasper?
His hands were ice cold, and he didn't release his grip on my wrist, but a steeled resolve and months of emotional toil had taken their toll. I knew coming here was a risk. Nothing except losing her before we're ready, I replied flatly. His cheekbones rose, and I could sense a smile behind the mask as he let go and gestured to look at the book. It was a life extension contract.
Once you sign on that dotted line, you will fear everything. If you wish to extend Amelia's life, you will give up your sense of security. This contract lasts for 1 month, and during that time she will feel reinvigorated and will appear well. But once you reach the 30th day, she will deteriorate once more and your time will be up. That should be enough time to sort out your affairs. But if it's not, well, we can renegotiate. And perhaps you'll want some pierogi then.
What did I have to lose? A month of normalcy and a chance to do everything we wanted? How could I turn that down for something as inconsequential as my own fears? No price was too high. I sighed. He snapped the book shut, startling me in my seat and staring for a moment, leaning down and peering into my eyes. Was he always this tall? This imposing? What did he see when he looked at me? I felt like a guinea pig in a lab, ready to be pricked and prodded for all manner of horrible things, and sweat ran down my brow in those tense moments before the hidden smile flashed up on his cheekbones and he handed me a vial of blue liquid.
Good. Our contract has begun, and this is what you'll need. Simply add it into whatever Amelia drinks or eats, and you'll see results within the hour. While you'll feel the effects immediately, hers will not start until after ingestion. I'll even be kind and wait until she's eaten to start the month. But only if you take my pierogi recipe.
He held up a finger and chuckled. Why was he so obsessed with this food? Did he do something to it? What's in the recipe? My stupid mouth blurted out before I could stop my tongue wagging, and he laughed harder. I'm sure that to him it was jovial and pleasant, but it screamed malice to me.
Ho ho ho, that'd be telling.
He wagged his finger and said goodbye as I hurried for the door. The black void outside no more inviting than his workshop of horrors. What unseen monsters lurked in the dark, waiting to get me? Even as I ran to the car some 30 feet away, I felt invisible hands reach out to grab at my shirt, pull at my ankles, and tear at my skin just for a bite of my flesh. But they never caught up. No, I'm too fast for that. I locked my doors and raced home to beat the sunrise, triple bolting the front door and checking every window upon arrival and putting the blue liquid into Amelia's morning juice. Here's to hoping I didn't just give up more than I could afford for nothing in return. The 3rd month. Clear skies exposing a scorching sun, bright rays seeping through the window with a soft breeze bringing the smell of barbecues and log fires on the wind. In the nearby lake, a crane bird flies down to take a drink. Something emerges from a wound on its throat, pushing at the slit to get free. It feels like it's looking at me. In the foreground, a sea of black clouds roll in, bringing with them a sense of intense dread. Despite this dread, the sun's presence would not be denied, and the familiar warmth it brought was just as much a comfort. The first thing that shocked me out of my stupor was the door being kicked in, a deafening boom that shattered my eardrums and sent my heart into overdrive. The fear of someone coming to take me away from Amelia, or worse, take Amelia to a home and away from my care, a place for her to die alone and afraid. Instead, as frantic eyes turn toward the front door to see my attacker, I see Amelia. She's fully dressed, dungarees with one strap exposing a colorful polka dot top and her beautiful hair cascading down her shoulders. The tops of her fringe held up by a pair of oversized goggles and her favorite chameleon, Gustav, on her shoulder. She was beaming at me with the most boyish grin I'd ever seen on her, a Nerf gun pointed directly at me.
Wake up, maggot! The sun is shining and it's time for a Nerf war! It's a new day, yes it is!
She giggled, and I felt my heart swell with joy as my fear gave way to adulation. She was better. It worked. I pushed innate fears down into my core and forced a smile as I leapt out of bed, grabbing a Nerf gun and giving her a 30-second head start. 29 years old and I still acted like a child hopped up on sugar, but I guess that's what love is at its core, feeling perpetually young. I heard her dash away, bare feet slapping against the cedar flooring as she found a tactical advantage. Within a few seconds, the house fell silent. Traipsing through the house and spying any advantage points, I began to see the home I'd lived in with her for years in a completely different light. Maybe it was the lack of natural lighting, perhaps I was still tired, but I did not recall there being so many imposing structures and shapes in my living room. A coat rack shaped like a twisted, elongated facsimile of a man, his arms pulling at his own spine as jagged feet stuck out in a menacing attempt to catch me, but frozen in time. The creaks and groans of the house settling now akin to the grumblings of a stomach possessed by an ancient, malignant creature that wanted nothing more than to digest us whole. But it was the shape behind the curtains that caught my attention most, bulbous and plump. It danced behind the fabric and invited me to investigate further, beckoning me with giggles punctuated with wheezes. It sounded wrong. The lump in my throat threatened to choke me from the tension, and I had no choice but to move forward. Shaking, hand outstretched to grab the fabric and yank it aside, I felt a sharp pang in my back and howling laughter from behind me as Amelia doubled over and ran off, daring me to catch her. When I turned back, the curtain had returned to its normal shape. I stood there, dumbfounded for a moment, as my fear dampened and a tension headache took its place. Amelia walked up to put her hand on my shoulder and the other against my forehead. Her smile faded and was replaced with concern.
Hey, you feeling okay? I know that's funny for me to ask, but...
I said nothing. How could I? This was not my moment to need care and sympathy. This was hers, and she deserved every ounce of it. But that didn't change the overwhelming dread, and exhaustion took its place. I didn't realize how utterly tired I was until I truly took in the events around me. Playing games with my terminally ill wife, who not 3 days prior had been bedridden and unable to tell me what year it was. I pulled her into a long hug and sobbed into her shoulder as she soothed me, running her hands through my hair and whispering reassurances.
It's all right. It's really me. I guess these meds worked wonders, huh? Let's enjoy the time we have, okay?
I nodded and let her calming smell linger, steadying my body even as the energy dissipated from me.
All things crawl into hell's mouth eventually, Jasper. It's just a matter of how much you season the meat first.
Something pushed its way into my ear, hot, slimy, and burning at my flesh as I pushed with everything I had to get away. Unable to fully break free, my eyes are directed towards the floor where Amelia's feet stand. But the decay, rot, and bloated flesh peering back up at me barely resembled the maintained and dainty feet of my wife. These were clearly belonging to that of a corpse, the nails yellowing and peeling away from the toes, bone pushing up to the thinning skin with such force it split the flesh. Before I could press my fingers against the rot to consider my own sanity, my body failed me and the world faded to black. When I next awoke, it was to the darkness of the bedroom and a cold rag on my head. Amelia told me I passed out and had a fever, but that she was happy to have the roles switched for once. I couldn't even speak for the pain. Just hearing her talk was enough to soothe me. Eventually the fever would break, and I finally allowed the impossible to set in with one question. Amelia, what do you want to do with the time we have? She stopped what she was doing and looked at me with all the warmth and love a human being could muster, as if she'd been given the keys to the kingdom.
Spend it like it's going out of style.
So it went, 29 days of doing things we knew she couldn't do before and would struggle to do after. We binged the later series of Twin Peaks and found it wanting. We traveled to the edge of Sturgeon after hearing rumors of the best damn gelato you'd get in this or any other dimension. We evened our Nerf war score and vowed the war would continue on. We loved unconditionally and without fear of what came after the 3 glorious weeks. As I got more comfortable, I could deny all the things at the corner of my vision, shrug off the night terrors when I awoke in her arms and knew she was safe. Anger was no longer a source of comfort in quiet nights of pontificating over her condition. Now it was replaced with contentment. Then, on the morning of the 30th day, she began slurring her words. By the afternoon, her balance was waning, and she fell into my arms some inches from the doomed coffee table that her skull collided with previously. When dinner came around, she forgot how to cook a steak and nearly burned herself in the process. Shame written across her face as she slumped away to bed and cried. As the night gave way to dawn and we reached day 31, she had a seizure. The dream was shattered, and we were once again back where we started, but now with the added pain of what could have been ripped away to expose a fresh and sensitive wound. Throw in the fear of everything around me, and I was at a breaking point. I looked at her in bed, a fragile thing with her face looking closer to 42 than 32, as her body tried and failed to fight off the damage being wrought from within. She was decaying before my very eyes, and that scared me more than any door slam, errant tree branch looking like a malformed fist, or strange thing floating in my eye. There was no other option. You have to understand, I had to go back to Dee Dee's and renegotiate the extension plan. It didn't matter that every tree on my frantic drive there seemed to lean forward, the night sky becoming less visible. A tunnel of bark with me none the wiser of what's on the other side. It didn't matter that the whispers that had been lingering in my ear for weeks were now subdued shrieks and threats of what will happen if I continue to ignore them. It didn't matter that something was hiding behind every single telephone pole, and I was catching more of its shape with every glance behind me as the road thinned out. All that matters is Amelia. You'd do the same in my shoes, right? Even if the next 3 months were hell. The 4th month. Hail spits from the skies, and thunderclaps sound like gray oaks crashing around my home. Giant footsteps tentatively growing closer and threatening to uproot my home at a moment's notice the second I let my guard down and take Amelia to the depths of the blackened skies. I see a snake in the underbrush outside of my yard, biting on his tail. I call my dad, and after some profuse apologies for the late-night inconvenience, he agrees to watch over Amelia while I go to renegotiate. I can see the sympathy written across the smile lines in his aged face. Forever an empathetic man, he was good to turn to for advice, but not for this.
Son, if you need to go somewhere to, blow off some steam and let it all out, you know it's healthy, right? Nobody will judge you.
He trails off as we stand in my living room.
Man shouldn't watch his true love go like this. Not so soon.
I know, Dad, but I know she can beat this. We can get better, even just for a little while. He looks at me quizzically. I tie the knots on my shoes with an added sense of determination.
Jasper, when it's time, it's time. I got some pamphlets on how to cope. There's this one that talks about Kubler-Ross, and I think you're at stage.
I stand up and hear my voice crack when I retort, the words acidic in my throat as they ooze past my lips. I know what stage I'm at. I'm at the stage of doing whatever it takes to make that woman comfortable as possible for as long as possible. Are you gonna help me or not? There was a silence, the weight of the words hanging in the air and fall on Dad's shoulders as he considers his response. Instead, he simply pulls me in for a hug and pats my back.
I get it, kid. A man's business is his own, and a good father, her husband, will always look out for his family. So when I tell you I'm here for you, warts and all.
He pulls me away and presses his forehead against mine, his composure waning.
I mean it. Do what you gotta do and come back here to help that amazing little lady.
I don't hear him the first time. My eyes shift to the divider connecting the living room to my kitchen, the fridge door opening. Why are there teeth in my fridge? No, wait, it's a mouth, a bright red mouth, tongue rolling out and exposing a fiery pit in the impossible blackness.
This is where it all ends, Jasper. Your defiance has consequences.
A formless voice echoes around me, my skin bubbling and every hair standing on end. It felt wrong. Amelia will never go to such an ugly place. I won't allow it. I breathe, my dad not moving as everything seems to be frozen, save for the hellmouth that was once my fridge. It laughs, a hoarse, reptilian cackle that makes my eyes vibrate in their sockets. The fridge mouth forms a head around it, red eyes and black fur with piercing fangs that protrude to the point of disbelief. Small spectral shapes funnel into the mouth, poked and prodded by an unseen tormentor.
It's not her who shall venture into the jaws of the beast, but you. She will watch your body crush in its mighty jaws.
It mocks, the mouth growing and filling me with an unspeakable dread. letting me know that this was a fight or flight moment. I shut my eyes, holding my dad for a moment and praying it would pass. "It's for Amelia. I will suffer whatever the world hurls at me for her." A mantra I would keep in mind no matter what happened, terrified of what would happen when the words grow hollow. I counted back from 10, steadying my breathing.
She will die alone and afraid, kicking and screaming.
7 seconds. I could feel a low hum run through my flesh and puncture my muscles. Something was moving towards me.
You will never know how scared she was. Why?
3 seconds. Its hot, fetid breath bristled against my cheeks. It smelled of rot, lard, and sage.
Because that's what will hurt you the most.
I snapped my eyes open and found myself looking into my dad's kind eyes. A moment hadn't passed for him. I swallowed and backed away, nodding in appreciation and reluctant to share what I'd seen. I'm gonna go check on her once more before I go," I mumbled, running hands over tired eyes to wipe away sleep and unseen tears. Sure enough, she was fast asleep and heavily medicated, small chest rising and falling rhythmically as her eyes fluttered. I was thankful for her lack of awareness at this moment at least. One last glance at the fridge as I head outside, just for my own sake. It was normal, save for a small line running down the floor, looking not dissimilar to a claw mark. I found coping mechanisms as time went on to deal with the majority of my anxieties. I suppose most people do when under immense stress. Thankfully, mine weren't too damaging. Music and podcasts tended to be where my mind gravitated towards, and I'm told the former holds great sway over the minds here in Sturgeon. Personally, my favorite is Dusklight Radio. I'd constantly have it on in the background while driving around. You can't find a heartfelt moment without some accompanying tunes, passers-by would remark. I suppose it's a good cushion, in a way, finding solitude in the crooning of a musician who sings about their own pains and struggles. We connect with their pain and, in some way, imagine it's our own being shared. I lost myself to the dulcet tones on the radio before pulling up at Dee Dee's, hammering on the door despite mounting concern of what I'd find inside.
"It's open, Jasper. Let yourself in. I'm a little preoccupied right now."
That silky smooth voice was almost melodic in tone as I pushed on the latch and walked into the dark room filled with a strange chemical lighting. On the large table opposite his apothecary was a strange, writhing beast. It hissed as I shut the door and set me with my back against the wall in shock. Beady black eyes fixed on me as a barbed tongue lashed around its head and a mass of red fur caked the body. Small but powerful limbs fastened to the table. Dee Dee looked at me, and his cheekbones rise again as he relishes in my fear. The circular lenses around his eyes fog up with heavy breaths as he pulls on his leather gloves and reaches for something under the table.
Don't mind Meridew here. He's been rather...
He stabs the creature in the chest with a hypodermic needle and pushes on the plunger. A faint wheeze leaves the beast's mouth as its limbs grow limp and eyes fade.
Uncooperative. But a job is a job. Hopefully the baking club won't be too upset with me.
I feel sweat run down my brow as I try to mouth the words "why" amid a sea of confusion. He picks up on it before I can intonate the words and sets about finding a potion on his vast bookshelf.
Well, sometimes people have disagreements, and sometimes those who feel wronged may make a pact with a creature that feeds off of negative energy until it can eat the withered husk. Those people are dicks. Meridew here...
He turns around and pries the creature's massive jaws apart, pouring a thick gunk down his gullet and forcing the mouth closed as the beast thrashes in protest.
He wasn't meant to be. I may be a fan of the Baker's Club, and in my humble opinion the most experienced among them, but I have a job to do, and that involves getting this delightful fellow back to where he belongs, in his cozy enclosure at the Dusklight Circus.
The body relaxes, and he places a sleeping cap over its eyes, seeing my shaken up form and gesturing to the usual spot on the table, chuckling.
Also, I wanted to see how your life with fear was faring with you. I take it you want to extend the deal, Jasper?
Unsteady legs took me to the chair, and I awkwardly nodded as he pulled out the great ledger from before, flicking through at an expedient pace I could still make out small indentations of clientele and numbers affixed to each person, a concoction in bold letters. How many deals has he made?
Jasper, I'm but a simple cook and problem fixer. Some call it dark magical potion selling, but all I offer is time. Temporary time.
He put his finger next to my name and tapped.
You are free to extend the negotiation, of course, but it comes with additional terms. I must warn you of what awaits you.
He sighs and walks to his window, staring out at the supermoon bathing sturgeon in a faded yellow glow.
Is she worth it, Jasper? Is this what she would want?
His voice soft, sympathetic, filled with empathy and a hint of curiosity. I don't think she'd want to go yet. But is she worth it? What kind of question is that? She's worth everything. I felt my back straighten up and my chest puff out involuntarily. Just the notion that she somehow wasn't worth this was beyond my comprehension. It was offensive. Whatever you need to add to this, I don't care. We need more time. I can't stand to see her suffer like this. There has to be something, anything, but don't you ever imply she's not worth it. I'd rather live the next 40 years of my life in crippling fear with her than a single day without. He doesn't turn towards me, but I can sense he's satisfied with my answer as I slump back in the chair, still exhausted.
They've started talking to you, haven't they? You're becoming a conductor for them, and they're only going to get stronger and bolder the longer you're aware of them, you know.
I don't care. They can't have Amelia. They never will. I was defiant, steadfast in that much. He shook his head.
Jasper, they're not coming to take her away because she's dying. They're not body snatchers. They're coming for you because you're now a threat to them.
It dawns on him that I don't have a clue what he means. He grabs a small book and pulls it open, thumbing through the pages until he comes across a photo of a towering man with his arm outstretched, a helm made of bone and gold adorning his head, his torso covered by a toga, but the myriad of faces mixed in expressions of pain, pleasure, and rage impossible not to notice.
You took something from their king, something he was owed, and now he has sent his followers after you to protect his standing. People are not supposed to defy the natural order, Jasper.
Who is he? I breathed, staring at him, filling me with dread.
Nurgle, god king of the sunset and ruler of one of the underworlds of pestilence. I suppose he's gotten wise to my services and has sought to put things right in his own way. If you go down this road, Jasper, it will bring you pain.
He sat back down and turned the book over, a small needle with which to prick my finger and the concoction sitting by his side.
Make sure this is what you want, because to extend it again, I will need to take your sense of ignorance. I will make you see more of what you're not supposed to see.
Will I be safe? I feel my neck tighten and my mouth go dry. He smiles again.
No, but you'll be happy. Isn't that the point?
He pulls a small charm from his pocket and puts it around my neck. It's old and heavy, but feels comforting.
So long as you keep this on you, they will not be able to physically harm you. Everything else is up to you.
He shakes his head, tutting.
60 days. That's all I can give you.
2 months, but what?
Because by the end of it, come hell or high water, you will beg me to cease the contract and life will go on.
He was blunt, to the point, detached.
I want you to come back in 1 month to check in, see where your head is at. With any luck, you'll want to end things early.
I signed before he could finish, knowing that I would savor every day I had with Amelia, even if my arms were torn from my body. I appreciate this, Doc. Amelia is going to be so happy, I just know it. My head buried in the book, I didn't notice the light changing.
Do me a favor, Jasper. Don't look at the moon when you leave. Better yet, don't look at it at all tonight. Now that you're unable to filter things or ignore them, it may be a little much for you. You might not like what you see.
I finished and attempted to quiz him on what he meant, but the light emanating from the window stopped me dead in my tracks and had me standing up on instinct. A sickly green had replaced the familiar yellow and was pulsating rhythmically, as if signaling to something. To me.
The last man who saw through the veneer of Sturgeon's barriers separating us from them had looked to the stars and realized the truth. I don't think you are quite ready for the same thing. So, no matter what you hear, do not look at the moon. Understand?
He kept his hands behind his back and returned to staring wistfully at it, letting his mind wander.
It is beautiful, though. My word.
What do you see when you look at it, Doc? He paused, and something in him twitched. Unnatural. Wrong.
Everything. Good luck, Jasper. Do watch your step on the way out. Our guest might wake up.
I took a sideways glance to Meridu, unmoving on the table, tongue still lazily swaying off the side, unfocused eyes staring in my direction. The drive home was tense. No music or podcasts. They just kept talking about the night sky and how the glow was good for the skin, especially when naked. They suggested we should all be naked in its magnificent glow and, if possible, grab other people to do it too. They started describing it, but the words turned to static in my ears, and eventually I just switched it off. It'll be fine. It's all for Amelia. I will suffer whatever the world hurls at me for her. I breathed, mantra doing its best to bring down my heart rate, eager to see her happy and healthy once more. Rounding off the bend and coming up my driveway, I catch sight of something slithering away from my view, scaly limbs pushing a sleek body quickly out of sight. I clenched my fist tight to stop my hands shaking and moved with purpose. The moment I crossed that threshold, I would not let my fear cripple me. Brave faces, everyone. I tried not to register the dull hum permeating through the house, the soft chanting with sinister lyrics, the way the light flickered as I turned a corner to reveal a pale creature standing still, waiting. I smiled at my dad and shook his hand, and he said she'd been a treat to supervise. I didn't tell him that something was latched to his neck, worming its way through his ears and nibbling on his temples, repeating his deeds ad nauseum. I couldn't bear to tell him what it was saying, but I was thankful to know his mistakes as a young man from his own lips. Honesty kept our family alive, and it helped me save face in front of him as this parasite barked them out. Not that Dad would understand what was going on if he tried. He was a divorcee, and I was his only son. Grief was not something his adult life had experienced much. Heartbreak, depression, sure, but not grief. I saw him out and hastily put the concoction into Amelia's meal as I doom-scrolled on my phone. An ugly habit, but one that helped pass the time. A video memory popped up of us, one of those little reminders that Facebook loves to put in front of us that time is slowly slipping away moment by moment. We are getting older, and there's nothing we can do to stop its ceaseless march. I bet that sounded clever in my head, but out loud it sounds cynical and mean-spirited, which, given the circumstances, is permissible, because as I look at the video of a younger me and Amelia, laughing and hosting a Twin Peaks watch party, I spy a pair of faces that I'd not seen in nearly a decade. Our best friends, Mariana and Caitlin, arm in arm and full of life, full of joy and love. They died on the way home from this party. Drunk driver hit them with the full force of his pickup. He lived, regrettably. A thought struck me like a bolt and stuck with me as I finished the mix, taking it to Amelia's room and resting in the armchair by her bedside so she could relax. Something that aged me and set about pushing my resolve to its absolute limits as the nature of morality hit me like a renewed wave. How many dead friends do I have on social media? The 5th month. Clear skies and a soft breeze. Flowers begin to bloom, and nature crawls out from the underbrush to proliferate. Everything grows, feeds, exists. Everything is in its place, and Amelia is better once more. She doesn't ask me how it's possible when she feels well enough mentally and physically to make her own lunch. She doesn't question it when she's able to go out for a long walk to the animal shelter and give the lonely dog some love. She just takes the moment with both hands and holds it close to her chest. In the small, quiet moments where the foul whispers can't reach me, and things aren't protruding from every single crack or crevice to mock me, I can just enjoy her happiness. I take her on road trips to her favorite destinations. We do midnight movie drives so she can watch the Godzilla movies in anticipation of the final showdown she's almost certainly not going to see. But we don't focus on that. We just focus on what we have now. We talk more, a lot more. I tell her about my fears of what happens when she's gone. She listens and absorbs them, waiting until I've spilled out every ugly feeling in me and felt lighter for it. Then, one night, near the end of the month while lying in bed, desperately trying not to focus on the tree-like fists smashing against the windows to get my attention, I ask her a question. What would you do if you could just stay here forever? Like this? She stares, and her eyes seem to twinkle in the light.
How important is this to you, Jasper?
I didn't miss a beat in replying. It's everything. You, me, this time when you're not sick.
But I am sick, Jasper. I'm dying.
She responded calmly, collected. She was at peace. I know, but what if we could find a way to make you better? She got up, a feigned smile masking months of pain and turmoil.
Honey, I know this has been hard on you. Not knowing which version of me you'll get on any given day. Seeing me at my worst. But this is part of the journey. It's what I expected. You need to expect it too.
I tried biting my lip. This was all for her. The suffering was all for her. In hindsight, this was a stupid thing to say, but I was tired. I was immature. The trees outside craned their necks through the window to observe, sap dripping from their makeshift jaws. You'd want to leave me on my own? You wouldn't even try to change things if you could? What about alternative medicine, cutting-edge technology? What if you can make a deal that would give you more time? How could you just think of yourself? Immediate regret. The moment that question left me and shot its way to her ears, I knew I'd messed up. I was expecting, maybe even hoping for an argument that was filled with expletives, bitter words, and regretful criticisms. But no, Amelia was beyond that. She turned to look at me with tears in her eyes and her shoulders shaking. I can see the strange insects crawling all over the tree bark, rotting it with their spit and looking for ways to get inside the house.
What you want is not as important as how we process this. You are not the one dying, Jasper. You are not the one waking up and not knowing if you'll be able to go to the bathroom on your own, if you'll know what the word food means, if you'll even remember who you are. It's selfish to leave you alone? You don't think I know that? You don't think I feel immeasurable guilt when I'm permitted to be lucid by this stupid disease? I want to spend every moment of freedom I have left in joy, without fear of what it does for you after I'm gone until we reach the end. My exit ticket has been punched, Jasper. I know when I'll be gone. It's up to you to figure out that lack long after.
She sank against the wall, pulling at her hair and red-faced.
I just want us to be happy. I just want to go out of this world with...
She sank down, eyes glazing over as I tried to find words of comfort, the light in the room dimming a tad. I already knew why. I didn't pay any attention to the creatures skittering across the walls, sucking out the light and the remaining positive energy from the room, determined to gain a foothold. I can hear them hiss in my ears, encouraging me to push Amelia further. I won't let you go. I will fight to the bitter end because that's what a life partner does. I replied solemnly, crouching down in front of her. I'm just not ready to throw in the towel, Amelia. I see a life ahead of us that has not yet been traveled. I'm determined to find a pathway there, and who knows, maybe I've found one. I gently put my hand on the side of her head, brushing tears aside to comfort her. But confused and frantic eyes looked up at me, eyes filled with fear and the instinct to fight or flight. In this moment, I'd let my guard down and forgotten exactly what she'd been saying this entire time as the bugs shriek a chorus of their warning calls. Amelia was sick. She was fearful of which version would come up when she woke every day. I had gotten too comfortable, too caught up in my fantasy of her being fine, not giving her more of the concoction. And it was the end of the month. She said nothing, just growled, her teeth gritted, and she headbutted me with her full force as she pushed me to the ground and followed it up with a swift kick to send me into unconsciousness. The 6th month. Darkness, heavy winds, and a bitter chill. My first memory following untold time in total absence is finishing the dream of a sky burial. Not for Amelia, but for myself. I feel the weight of my body on the shoulders of those I love as they slowly, methodically, and carefully take my still warm corpse up a steep mountain. I somehow feel the lick of the cold air and the refreshing sensation of it filling my lungs as we ascend. They lay me down on the peak in a small bed of hay, the sun reaching its zenith as soft chanting fills the small clearing with passions long since dissipated from my consciousness. Vultures come down and tear at my flesh, swallowing me like carrion, taking me into the sky, away from my problems. Something resembling my eye looks down and sees Amelia, safe and healthy, arms wrapped around a child that looks like. I was awakened with a force on my chest, burning on my skin, and a splitting headache. The sky outside a clear blue, a momentary respite before my memory kicked in. My nose feels broken, and I can feel a huge bruise forming on my cheek where she kicked me. She may be small and sickly, but that woman had energy. The house was an absolute mess. Papers had been torn out of books and strewn across the floor. The lights were almost all absent, save for the kitchen light. Spilled food and drinks helped form a trail of carnage as I stumbled around the house, looking for Amelia and hoping she was all right. The bugs had changed their shriek to a low vibration of their wings that formed 2 consonants, easily discernible to my now overly aware ears. Nurgle. Did this mean? A single note had been placed on the countertop, clean save for the small glasses of blue liquid filled halfway and positioned in a circle around the note in the center. A small passage from a history book next to it. The passage detailed a bridge from mythology that once you crossed it, you could never return. It's a one-way passage for all souls either dead, dying, or seeking respite to the next world, guarded by an underworld king who coveted his domain like no other, known to send out emissaries to claim souls who resisted or those who sought to disrupt the order. Affixed to the bottom of the passage was a small pin on the Sturgeon map showing one of our large bridges between the metropolitan area and Mantis Ranch, the Golgotha Passage. The note had 6 words that scared me more than anything my unfiltered eyes could sense, more than any consequences for my actions. It sent me rushing to the car in a blind panic of where to go first, to JJ for advice or to the Golgotha Bridge for absolution. Scribed at the top in Amelia's familiar, beautiful cursive were the words,
I'm sorry. I know.
And in scratchy, jagged writing beneath were 2 more that chilled me to my core. It's time. Without birth and death, and without the perpetual transmutation of all the forms of life, the world would be static, rhythmless, undancing, mummified. Alan Watts. I won't mince words. I messed up. The realization sank in that not only had Amelia figured out what I was doing, namely extending her life and giving her more time, but she was going to rectify it on her own, by letting Nurgle, a king of the underworld, take her across the Golgothan Bridge and claim her soul for good. I can't let that happen. Racing to Dee Dee's workshop, I found it somewhat easier to block out every terrifying thing that attempted to jump out at me or distract me. Sure, my palms were shaking, toes curled inwards to the point of straining them, and my throat was scratchy and swollen, but I was more scared of losing her than anything else. I didn't wait to get an answer. I barged through the door and came face to face with the creature Dee Dee had been operating on prior. Black beady eyes bulged and a sea of slobber caked my shirt as it leapt at me, trying to bite at any appendage it could find. Jesus! I cried, stumbling back, and the creature clamping its jaws down on my forearm, a pair of sharp incisors crushing the bone and something hot and acidic working its way through my veins. As I looked to find a place to punch at it and pull my arm free, I saw a small white in its eyes begin to grow larger, not dissimilar to how a cat's eye widens when about to kill its prey. Without thinking, I used what adrenaline I had to lift myself up, creature still attached and tearing at the skin, and throw my body weight into one swing that collided Meridew with the doorframe. The searing pain was drowned out by my own screams and that of the creatures as it let go and made a guttural noise as it tried to rebound. At that moment, Dee Dee reappeared, jolly as ever as he scooped up Meridew with total ease and, with it still thrashing in his arms, gave it the lightest tap on its skull with an ungloved hand, and let it fall limp.
Ah, I see you've got acquainted with Meridew. Don't worry, he's mostly harmless most of the time. Rehabilitation has been difficult because of the baking contest.
I don't let him finish. With everything I have, I swing a fist into the side of his Plague Doctor mask and shatter one of the circular frames in the process. I feel bone crunch under my knuckles, and his body falls with my fist, but he doesn't go to the floor. I'm not here for one of your whimsical games, Dee Dee. They took Amelia. She figured out what I was doing, and now she's going to be... I stared down at my shoes, vision blurring, and my bitten arm growing weak. But the anger inside me only rising with every moment of my own mounting failure. It's all your fault! I swung again, but this time he effortlessly sidesteps me and grabs my shoulder, pinching the joint ever so slightly, but in such a way that I cannot move or even feel anything. The door closes, and he turns to walk behind me.
You get the first one for free, Jasper. Your hurt and Meridew's damage to you is indeed my fault. I thought I could leave him unsupervised, but even he can sense when something is a target, when something sees him for what he is. He's an animal from the other side of Sturgeon, you see. They don't like it when people see them for what they are.
I see his ungloved, emaciated hand take my damaged arm, but I don't feel it.
But the rest, the reason he can see them, the reason Amelia has gone, that is all on you.
He twists it and digs his hand into the wound, pushing up against the joints and the muscles. For a moment, I only see white, and a ringing sound floods my ears, teeth clenching. But as soon as it comes, it goes. My arm aches, but I feel mobile once again. Dee Dee is leaning over his desk, book open and looking wary. I can see an eye poking through the shattered frames. It's young, but there's something old within the pupils. I'm sorry, you're right. I'm mad at myself, my own selfishness. I can't stand the idea that she's going to be gone. I wanted this to go on for a bit longer, and Shame washes over me, and I walk over to take my seat, forlorn. Please, help me get her back. Help me extend it for just a little longer. He surveys me for a while, breathing heavily.
You know that all things must come to an end eventually, right? This was never a permanent solution.
He flips the pages to a list of clientele, and both mine and Amelia's names appear next to a list of complex ciphers that jump out on the page as if living, breathing, sentient creatures.
She hasn't got long left, but if you are to extend it, it's going to cost you dearly, Jasper.
I know. I'll lose my sanity if I stay any longer with this ability to see the unseen, but I'm prepared to do so, especially if it means I get her back, if I get more time with her. She's worth everything to me. I was resolute, steadfast that I could handle more nightmares and threats. Dee Dee shook his head, and for the first time, I sensed pity.
No, Jasper. This is the final extension. Should we get her back, it will cost you your soul. A life for a life. I will let her carry on, but at the expense of your own well-being. This is the offer I extend to you.
He didn't break his gaze. He'd done this before.
It is the only offer. I'm sorry. Take some time to think it over.
I looked out the window and simply observed for a moment. I watched nature take place in the clearing, the sun hanging at its zenith as all manner of creatures proliferated beneath its majesty. Harvester ants take pieces of a decaying stick insect to bring back to their nest and feed their ravenous queen, many of her brood infected with the parasitic wasp larva that will eat its way out of her young before going off to repeat the cycle. Birds of all shapes and sizes flock to the many trees in Sturgeon City Park. I watch for a while as they congregate, the males flashing their vibrant plumage and the females twitching their heads, deciding if this is her life partner. I look out at the McGraw Memorial Park, children playing happily, parents gossiping about their day-to-day issues, and the elderly sitting by, watching the next generation flourish under the trees they planted. Life goes on. It will continue to go on after everyone on this earth is gone and a brand new generation, new and vibrant with no connections to the old guard, inherit the land. This world will keep turning and spinning on its axis. Life will find ways to proceed, and above all else, it'll step aside when the time comes. I breathed, a tear running down my face. Dee Dee looked at me. Even beneath the mask, it wasn't tough to see his studious gaze. He looked as if he were trying to figure out a puzzle. With a swift turn on his heel, he clapped his hands together and grabbed the heavy book, sliding it under his arm.
All right, it's settled. It looks like you've made your choice. As a gesture, I will act as blinders for your fears until we reach the Golgothan Bridge. Can't have you being scared of every damn thing on the way and wasting time, can we?
He patted me on the shoulder, that weight far beyond what it should be. Walking to his shelves, he hummed and grabbed some bottles, stuffing them into his coat before dashing out the door and straight for my car. It's funny what you notice as you're frantically trying to get somewhere. How much your legs shake, your knuckles whiten as you grip the steering wheel. The irritability rising to unparalleled levels, not because of other circumstances, but because you know you're late to something you should have always been early to. But we can never plan for the unexpected. That's the nature of grief. I must have been breathing heavily, the sound of my teeth grinding as I sped up, turning down a long dirt road connecting Sturgeon's eastern markets to the Golgothan Bridge, a little trail known as the Myopic Road. Dee Dee sighed and tapped the car's computer dashboard, scrolling through the playlist Amelia had left. Forever Honeymoon.
Do you mind if I...
His hand hovered over the song selection, waiting for my approval. Shoulders hunched, and I nodded. It did us no good to sit in the suffocating silence as the road dipped and the trees began encircling the trail, thick black roots jutting out and retaking what humanity had carved out on the main road. He hit play, and I immediately knew what song he'd chosen and why. How did you... I breathed, but he shook his head and held up a finger, pointing to the road ahead. In the darkness, something curled up on the ground, swaddled in a thick custom blanket, and shivered. The closer I got, the easier the features were to make out. The space buns, bright hair, and petite frame. Amelia! I slammed the brakes, headlights still beaming at her body some 30 feet away, frantically unbuckling my seatbelt to dart over and save her. But Dee Dee grabbed onto my arm and I froze.
Look.
His voice was low, purposeful, without malice, but absolutely dripping in determination. I resisted for a moment, until I saw the figure cloaked in flames emerge from the thicket, each step bringing with it small circles of flames that burst forth and extinguished. The flesh was melting away, dropping to the ground in large chunks with a wet, slopping sound, but the face still bore recognition to its original form. It was mine. Terror gripped my stomach as this malformed version of me loomed over Amelia, not a single ember touching her as it outstretched its arms and protected her. Shrieking at the top of its lungs,
"She will not die! I will protect her! I will save her!"
At this, winged creatures descended from the tree branches, fat, oversized ravens with sharpened claws and spiked beaks as they scratched and clawed at his body, desperate to reach her. With every defiant swat away, more of his skin fell and his screams grew hoarse, falling to his knees and laying over Amelia, the beast encircling him.
"No! I won't accept it!"
I felt sweat run down my brow as the birds took pieces of him away before flying up and back into the trees, nothing left in their place but a stack of ashes. What did I just... I felt my hands shaking.
Your denial. Keep driving.
Dee Dee's words hung in the air as I put my foot down on the accelerator gently and the car rolled down the hill, over the ash, and descended into further darkness. It was a couple of minutes before I spotted it, a hulking mass of arms pulling apart birds and smashing them against the trees. I could feel its rage from this distance and felt unseen eyes fixate upon me.
Nobody will take her from me!
It shrieked, pulling apart one hapless bird, desperately trying to beat its wings and escape. The beak gripped firmly into one pulsating fist as another arm ripped it away, black blood spilling over the creature, small slits with teeth opening up on the bicep to lap at the contents. Then, just like the first, it began bubbling into a pool of collective black blood, barely visible toothpick legs dropping in and dissolving at the mere touch. Still, regardless of the pain, it refused to stop thrashing, even as the last bicep tried desperately to smash the remaining birds.
No! Body!
It gurgled, the form disappearing underneath the liquid bit with a final sizzle and the remaining birds flying back into the woods. I'm not that angry, I protested, feeling disgust at what I witnessed and a hardened core of dread in my gut.
But you were once. Come on.
Dee Dee extended a finger towards the still descending pit, gradually becoming steeper before the darkness swallowed the rest. I obeyed, letting the car gently descend with my foot still easing off the brake pedal. My free leg bouncing and the mounting anxiety of time wasted was not lost on me. I knew we couldn't do this forever. Look, Amelia's running out of time. Can't we do this some other time? I get that I need to be better. I need to recognize my problems with her illness, but there has to be a quicker way to do this. I was practically pleading, taking my eyes off the road to look at him and show him how much I meant it. Dee Dee, you have to understand.
No, Jasper, it's you who needs to understand. We're not here to address just one problem. We're here because it is a part of the journey. There is no reaching Amelia without going through this place. If you don't understand yet, you are about to.
I didn't understand what he meant, but seeing him brace the side of his car seat was indication enough. I turned back in time to see someone flagging down the car, arms flailing wildly in the air and a wide, crazed look in their eyes. They walked around to my window and frantically started screaming at me.
Oh, thank God you came. Look, I don't have time to explain, but I need you to let me in. I've got to get out of this place. There's something super important I have to do, so...
He immediately tried the door handle, without waiting for a response, eyes darting down just to look back up at me, confused.
Come on, man. Let me in.
I turned to Dee Dee, already feeling my stomach turn to knots. He shook his head, and I mimicked it back. I can't. I have somewhere to be, and we can't deviate. I'm sorry. Before I could finish, he slammed his head into the window with full force, the sickening sound of bone meeting glass as his blood freely poured from the bridge of his nose. Features twisted as he snarled against the glass.
You're sorry? Dude, I cannot be late. I'll give you anything. Please. Please!
He raised his head back and smashed again, saying please with every repeated, sickening smash. As he did, I saw his features shift and change until they softened in place. The flat nose became uplifted, the eyes changed color, and the lips grew fuller, blood staining the teeth. Amelia. I reached for the handle, but Dee Dee grabbed me.
Bargaining. Another test. You need to drive, Jasper.
How the window hadn't shattered yet was beyond me, the sickening crunches intermixing with the splattering of blood caking the glass. I couldn't fathom his hesitation. We can bring her with us. She obviously got lost while finding a way back here and needs our help. Dee Dee just stared at me, incredulous. What was I even saying? I watched this person shift before my very eyes. I blinked, clarity overcoming me as I put the car into drive and sped off, clipping them ever so slightly as I did. We drove for another few minutes as the road evened out, the sky above almost totally blotted out by the towering trees. We descended for some time, and it seemed we'd hit the bottom. There was a small patch of gravel to the side for us to park up, Dee Dee indicating to pull over. We sat in silence for a few minutes as the music played, and the realization of what I was witnessing came to focus. Depression is next, right?
Indeed. Are you ready?
Dee Dee seemed concerned, but detached, like he knew this was something I had to face. I swallowed, felt sandpaper in my throat. I don't think that matters right now, Dee Dee, but if I need to face it to get out of here, to get to Nurgle and Amelia, then that's what I'll do.
It's never been about facing these trials, Jasper. It's about what comes after. What you are willing to accept.
He pointed towards the center of the road.
You must face what's coming, not just what is already here.
I didn't understand what he meant, but it was clear that there was no progress without doing as he instructed. I almost found myself missing the lackadaisical and whimsical persona he had before, but this was hardly the time for comical undertones. I did as instructed and walked with purpose to the center of this endless stretch of road, every foot forward evoking a fresh sense of guilt, anxiety, and depression. Left foot forward.
You know that all this is finite. It has an end point.
Right foot forward.
Eventually, we all must say goodbye. It is a natural part of the cycle of life.
Left foot forward.
She will die. That is a certainty. And one day...
Right foot forward. I looked at the expanse in front of me and felt a cold wind whip at my face, stinging and hardening the tears. I will be alone. Completely, utterly alone. I know. And I'm not ready. I breathed, feeling this cold breeze smash against my bare skin and envelop my flesh, the same black substance that had dissolved the anger beast wrapping itself around every fiber of my being, crawling its way up my waist and digging into my stomach. The further it climbed, the more my misery grew, the more that fear deep inside me grew. Every anxiety-riddled thought and depressive cycle forced its way past the rational barrier of my brain and screamed louder than anything else I could muster.
One day, you have all these enjoyments, all these rituals that make you happy, and then, one day, poof, they're gone. You're gone.
The formless voice hisses as it slithers around my chest.
You will cease to exist. The world will keep spinning. Those who love you will grieve for a time, but then they will die too. Eventually, all who know your name, your idiosyncrasies, your nuances, they will be gone, and you will be less than an echo. This is the fate that awaits us all. The fate that awaits Amelia.
I sank to my knees. Pain-racked sobs I was unable to control ripped through me, and I cast my head up to the sky as this thing took control of my body, my legs already growing numb from the cold. Is there any way to save her? To give her the life she deserves and the closure of knowing she'll be at peace? I mumbled between cries. I just want her to be safe. I want her to be healthy, with or without me. Dee Dee got out and leaned against the car, windows drawn down and the music playing, even as this mass overtook my body. Nurgle is going to take her away, isn't he? I croaked, flashes of memories running through my mind, small moments of her beauty, her serenity, idiosyncrasies you learned to tune out that had long lost their novelty now coming to the surface.
Yes, Jasper. There is nothing to be done about it, and fighting him will yield you nothing. You are no warrior or arbiter of fate. You are simply a man going through unmitigated heartbreak.
Dee Dee leaned forward and reached out a hand.
But you can get past it. You need only accept what is going to come to pass.
I felt the shape slither up my neck, pulling at my windpipe, and the weight of my grief growing ever heavier on my shoulders. I will never get another sunny day with her, another night binging our favorite show or making inside jokes about things we'd done. I will never have a family with her. I felt the tears run down my face and cheeks grow hot, my voice beginning to fail me.
No, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy the time you still have left. Love is about sacrifice and trust. Whether you take my offer of a life for a life or not, someone must depart. That doesn't eliminate the love you have. Not one bit.
I grabbed his hand and pulled with everything I had, the black mass pulling at my skin and splitting it in places as it desperately tried to cling to me, scratching up my wrists and stomach as it steadily peeled away. I fell to the floor, my body stinging and a feeling of calm beginning to wash over me. I understand. By the journey's end, someone has to go. There was no bargaining with the king of the dead. I took a deep breath and surveyed the road ahead, now beginning to curve upwards and out of the forest. I nodded to Dee Dee and we both got in the car. I nursed my wounds and buckled in, selecting the playlist and queuing up a track. Wedding songs. Whatever it takes, Amelia. We came out of the clearing within 15 minutes, a somber silence permeating the car, knowing what had to come next. It was so similar to that first time we went to the hospital, knowing full well the news we'd receive when getting there, a moment of both dread and clarity mixed into one. Before long, the Grand Golgothan Bridge came into view, connecting Central Sturgeon and the wharf to the nearby Mantis Bay. Nobody recalls when it was built. The scholars say it had been there when people first began settling in what would later be Sturgeon, some 850 years ago. Large obsidian pillars and thick rusted chains connecting the wooden boards. Eventually, they'd be swapped out for tarmac, and safety nets would be placed on either side to prevent wayward drivers going over or anything in the river from coming up. Legends always persist that the bridge had an otherworldly aspect to it, that it was the bridge to the underworld when approached in the right circumstances. In the waning hours between dusk and dawn, a soul stuck between the realms could make the pilgrimage and offer themselves willingly to the underworld king and queen, making the transition easier, depending on their quality of character. As we drove down the wharf, the hours growing late and a thick fog rolling in, I began feeling one overwhelming emotion. Clarity. Dee Dee, I have a question.
If it's about my baking secrets, I'm afraid I'm sworn to the grave to keep them.
He replied, chuckling.
Ask away, Jasper.
What do you think dying is like? He considered my question, the slow crawl of the car against the setting sun and lavender sky a perfect backdrop.
I think, in all my years of watching the wicked, weird, and wonderful pass through the gates of life and death, the death is as mundane as it is terrifying, as beautiful as it is visceral. Death is a chorus of your friends and family welcoming you home after a long sabbatical away, eager to share tales of their exploits and hear your own. Death is the most beautiful of reunions and the best surprise party, because nobody ever expects to have the lights shut out on this world, only for them to be flicked back on so unceremoniously. Death is the safest place you ever had in life, magnified with all the love you kept along for the ride. It's a journey all undertake, but none can report on.
He points a finger to the sky as we round a corner and park up at the base of the bridge, some stars beginning to poke through the thin veneer of lavender and bring with them a beautiful cobalt blue, swirling colors of untold beauty twinkling gently against the skyline.
That is death. It is beauty reaching back eons to let us know it was alive. It burned brightly and fiercely. It went out as it came in, with purpose.
I smiled as we got out, handing him the keys and instructing him on what to do when he heard the cue. Thank you, Dee Dee, for everything. He held out a hand and shook mine, firm grip, and pulled me in for a tight hug. I strolled through the fog and did my best to ignore the whispers on the wind, calling, screaming, and laughing in their mocking tones to scare me. I won't lie to you and say I feared nothing. I feared everything, but the notion of putting things right was strong enough to carry me through anything. I'm here, Nurgle. I want to make this right. I know I messed up. Please, let's talk about this. A low, authoritative voice boomed out from all directions, sounding close enough to touch and yet so far above me.
Sturgeonites. Always thinking they can find a workaround to the natural order of things. Well, not this time. You wish to talk? Why should I converse with a whelp who fights against my very order with such vitriol?
Because I want to make a deal, to appease you and make this right by Amelia. Please. I held my hands up and dropped to my knees. I'll do what needs to be done. He made a grunting sound before the air grew hot and a wind whipped up some distance away. A well-dressed man with a shimmering bald head and black antlers stood there. He fiddled with his red tie and the blue suit glistened in the waning light. The air felt strange around him. He exuded such intense authority that I almost didn't dare rise to my feet until he extended a hand, encouraging me to do so.
Speak. What do you propose?
He eyed me up and down, as if considering my value. All the creatures I'd seen didn't compare to the sheer presence of this man. I tried to extend Amelia's life because I am so terrified of losing her. I ignored her wishes and tried to get her proper medical help, but she was resigned to her fate. I did the most egregious thing to keep her alive for my own selfish reasons, suffering to keep her happy. At first, I thought it was just an extra month, a gift from me to her, but seeing her that vibrant, full of life again, I just fell deeper into denial and refused to let go. I felt the sobs rising in my chest, but I bit down and carried on, refusing to lose my nerve. Dee Dee has made a proposition. Her life for mine. She suffered because of my mistake, and I've come to terms with the end. I just think she's deserving of another chance, to find someone who will love her better. He stares at me, black eyes shining and hands behind his head as he calls behind him.
Did you hear all that, miss?
A familiar voice calls through the fog, and from the car, I can hear Dee Dee turning up the car stereo.
I did. It was very sweet and decidedly on brand for him.
A shape comes through the fog, and I recognize the contours, the hair, the gleeful grin. Amelia.
And what would you like to do? Do you wish to take his offer?
She steps to Nurgle's side and pulls a mock thinking face before crossing the distance and placing her hands in mine.
It's very like Jasper to try and do things his own way, even at the expense of himself. But this is not his burden to bear.
She caresses the side of my cheek, wiping away a tear.
Jasper, you can't atone for a mistake in death. And leaving me here alone isn't going to fix that. This happened to me, and it is with me it shall stay.
Amelia, I'm so sorry. I was just terrified of losing you. I thought maybe if I took the plunge, whatever was after would make the wait easier. I broke down as she began softly weeping too, the smile never leaving her face, like she knew something I didn't.
I know, honey. But part of this is knowing to let go. It's not meant to be easy. Something you can just figure out over a single revelation. You will go through many peaks and valleys of hurt. You will spend months feeling fine and feeling guilty as a result. You'll beat yourself up for never crying when you should. And then suddenly, you'll be in a store buying jerky and it'll hit you like a tidal wave. Because you'll want to tell me something and I won't be there. And that's going to be the hardest part.
I didn't know what to say. What else could I say? I pulled her in for the tightest hug I'd ever given her. A hug that felt like it would kill me to break away from as she nestled her face into my chest. Can we have a moment to say goodbye? I looked to Nurgle, checking a pocket watch in his waistcoat. He sighed and nodded, turning on his heel and waving his hand as he disappeared into the fog.
Remember this and be grateful, Jasper.
We stayed there for a moment before I realized what I'd asked Dee Dee to do. Taking a moment to wish circumstances were different, I leaned my head back. Hey, Dee Dee, turn it up. Amelia leaned her head up, those beautiful eyes peering into mine and the enormity of our lost future deep within them. Tears welling up as she heard the familiar chords.
Our first dance.
I put my hand on her hip and we softly moved as the song echoed along the bridge. You know we would have made an amazing old couple. I whispered into her ear. She giggled.
I know. A couple in their 70s maintaining the stereotype of crazy old folks who scream to get off their property. Preferably with a makeshift hunting rifle. You'd be still undertaking wacky hobbies. And I bet I'd still be boxing or skydiving long into my 80s.
I spun her out and watched her body move with the motions, so graceful and like moving art. As she pulled back in, I kissed her, hands on her face, and with every bit of passion we'd had the first time we met as teens. The day she said yes, and when I walked her down the aisle. Dee Dee says he thinks death is like the best surprise party ever. All your friends waiting eagerly to catch up with you after your long journey back home. I paused, hands shaking. I wonder how many stories I'll have to tell you when I get there.
I'll be ready with a cup of tea and open arms. Maybe I'll have some of my own. Who knows what else is waiting for me there? It's a whole new adventure when you think about it.
I paused, considering the weight of my words. You'd have been an amazing mom, the absolute best. I'd have done anything for you.
And you'll find a chance to do that again. One day.
She croaked, teary-eyed as we danced. You kidding? You're my one and only. I'll be the greatest hermit you've ever seen. I tried to force a smile, but she shook her head.
No. You have to promise me you'll find someone one day. When you're ready. You have so much love to give, Jasper. If you don't, I'm gonna haunt you forever and make everything annoying. Spoons will go missing, your wallet will be put on the top shelf. You name it.
We laughed and came together once more, content in that moment as one soul. Laughter turned to tears and we sobbed. Would that be so bad? I asked in a small voice. She shook her head and put her finger on my lips, a soft please from her before I nodded. I promise, Amelia.
It's almost time, honey. I'm so glad we got this time. I was worried there'd always be something left unsaid.
I looked at her, the same way I had done for so many years. The older she'd gotten, the more beautiful she'd become. All I could do was smile at how lucky I'd been. There's nothing left to say. I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat, horrors and all. I kissed her forehead, savoring the moment as her hands wrapped over mine.
I'm so glad I chose you. I stopped searching so long ago and got to have the adventure we did. I'll be waiting for you on the next one. So don't be late, okay? I love you, Jasper.
With that, we slowly danced as the song reached its end and exchanged one final kiss. I felt her hand slip through mine, and within a few minutes, she was gone. A great whooshing sound filled my ears, and the sound of great doors shutting cut through the night. I finished the dance and stood there. The fog began to clear as the other side of the bridge became visible. I felt my heart shatter all over again as I stared into space, still hoping she would come back. I turned to see Dee Dee walking towards me, unclasping his plague mask.
You know you could have never taken my deal, Jasper. Amelia and Nurgle knew that, of course.
Why not? I thought it was a serious offer. He got closer and removed the mask, letting it drop to the ground and looking at me. A beautiful mix of white face paint, the eyes enshrouded in black shadows, gorgeous bright patterns starting at the forehead, running across the cheeks and finishing at the base of the skull.
It would be unbecoming of a member of Death to mess with the order of things, wouldn't it? But a healthy nudge in the right direction? I don't think anyone would mind.
He smiled, diamonds in his teeth. A wave of comfort shot over me.
DD, Death of Disease. We all have our part to play. My sister, Lady Death, covers our warriors, but my job involves looking after a different kind of fighter.
He put a reassuring arm on my shoulder. That's why you helped? Why you guided me through it? Dee Dee, I don't know what to say. My eyes widened as I realized what was happening, who I was talking to. Amelia, is she?
Amelia is safe. I promise. I can't tell you what comes next, but I know she's waiting for you, wherever it is. Come on. It's a long drive, and I have some baking secrets to share with you.
With that, we set off for the car and away from the bridge, away from Amelia, and into the unknown. A new month. It's a beautiful day. The air is cool and there is life all around us. I look up at the night sky and see even more stars littering the canvas, but there's one in particular that stands out. It shines right over me and radiates with its twinkling beauty, far surpassing that of its siblings. It's fierce, bright, and pink. Hello everyone, I hope you're having a good day. So I'm back from my trip, and I'm working on some longer stories for you all. I'm working on finishing up the next part of Baraska. I've just been waiting on some lines for that one. I also have a few other longer ones that I want to do. I was thinking that for the summer months this year, I might try to just exclusively stick to some really long stories, like maybe at least an hour and a half to 2 or 3 hours long. So if I do that, it might slow down the amount of videos that I can put out. Normally I try to aim for 2 a week, but if I was to do like a 2-hour plus story, I might only be able to upload 1 a week. But I'm curious to see what all of you think about that. Would you like to see longer videos, but less frequently? Or are you enjoying the current rate of stories where it's about 2 a week? But yeah, while I'm finishing up some of those longer ones, here is a compilation of ocean and water themed stories. I'd love to know what you think of them and which one was your favorite. It wasn't until I found myself standing on the deck of an unmanned military ship, sailing out into the middle of the ocean, before I finally started to question the mission I'd signed up for. The exceptionally large sum of money had been the initial hook, but the allure of a top-secret mission was not something I longed for. Still, I had to ask, why had they chosen me? And where were we actually going? A good sailor keeps his mouth shut, I remembered my sergeant telling me more than a decade earlier. Things had been so simple then. I followed orders and never questioned whether or not our actions were inherently good. In my eyes, I was doing the right thing, but the line between good and evil quickly blurred as I'd gotten deployed. I know they told you not to talk to the crew, but I gotta ask, what in God's name made you sign up for this mission? A man asked as I stared out at the ocean. He was well built, clearly a soldier based on his posture, though his outfit didn't match the rest of the crew. I fit the profile, was all I responded. Do you even know where we're heading? I shook my head. That's probably why they chose you. The name's Ulrich. I'm the leader of this mission. I looked over at him. I wouldn't have taken him as the man in charge. He looked well more like an enforcer, a man with more power than brains. His age fit, though, and his cold, emotionless demeanor was enough to tell me he'd seen a thing or two. I'm Sean. I'm guessing you're going to tell me where exactly we're heading? Down there, he said as he pointed to the cold, blue ocean. I chuckled. I've never served aboard a submarine. If you think I can aid you in underwater warfare, you've chosen the wrong man. He smirked in return. That ain't it, Sean. We're going deeper, all the way to the bottom. I had to admit that the man had piqued my curiosity more than the initial briefing. Why? What's down there? Atlantis! What else? He exclaimed as if announcing a long-awaited reveal. The mythological sunken city. That's a real place? I asked, still awaiting the punchline. No, of course not. At least not in a historical sense. The Atlantis we're visiting is a base built shortly after the Second World War. In anticipation of nuclear war, a lot of rich bastards wanted a safe place to hide. They decided the bottom of the ocean would fit. It had to be kept a secret, of course. Only a handful of government employees ever learned about the project, and they've since taken the secret to their grave. The look on my face must have been enough because I didn't have to ask another question before he started talking. The base remained a secret until a few documents resurfaced a couple of years ago. Apparently, we lost contact with the base in the 80s, alongside all the science put into the base. Can you imagine the kinds of things they kept down there? No, I said. That's why we're going down there. We're going to get the station back up and running and retrieve as much information as possible. 2 other men joined us, both clearly military. They were Jacob and Benjamin, the combat engineers meant to accompany us on the mission. As the ship finally stopped, Ulrich led us to the starboard side, where a strange vessel had been prepared. It looked more like a lunar landing probe than a sub, one with an exceptionally thick hull. "You ever been in the depths?" Jacob asked as we were escorted inside. I shook my head, as did Benjamin. The truth was that the 4 of us were all strangers, carrying only fragments of information. Due to the risk of leaking top-secret information, I half worried we'd be executed upon completion. The vessel shook as they dropped us into the ocean, but as soon as we'd fell below the surface, an odd sense of peace washed over us. The descent itself was rapid, with light quickly giving way to infinite darkness as we sunk into the depths below. A few instances of small talk broke up, but we quickly fell silent again with each creak of the outer hull settling under the immense pressure of the ocean. I felt tense the entire ride, and it wasn't until I felt an abrupt stop before I realized we'd reached the bottom. "I guess this is it," I said. "All right, Jacob, initiate docking procedures. The rest of you gear up. I don't want anyone leaving this vessel without their atmospheric suit. You take point, Sean," Ulrich ordered. I nodded in agreement, and Jacob made contact with the docking station without much hassle. From there, we could connect to the station's monitoring systems. "Looks like the pressure inside is fine. Life support is partially broken, though. Only a few sections still have oxygen. We might be able to get them back up and running, but I can't promise anything," Jacob said. "Any sign of life?" Ulrich asked. "I couldn't tell you based on this alone, but without oxygen, what could there possibly be?" Jacob asked back. "Still, stay alert. Let's get this over with." My ears painfully popped as the doors opened. I raised my rifle and took the first step inside Atlantis. The station was running on its emergency backup systems, supposedly fueled by underground volcanic activity, but it meant we had a little more than emergency lights to guide our way. The rest of them followed closely. As we exited the airlock, we found ourselves in a neatly decorated hallway that was more reminiscent of a 50s hotel than a submarine base. While the metal walls still stood exposed, they'd clearly put a great deal of effort into making the place feel like home. On each side of the hall were several metal doors, each marked with simple numbers and letters. Between each door hung a picture of one of the inhabitants, most of them scientists, and some military. "I don't see anything," Benjamin said. "Neither do I," Ulrich agreed. "The comms should be in Section 7H, alongside the control rooms somewhere in the center of the base. We should deal with life support first. It should be right around the corner in 3C. The decoration made the station seem more gloomy rather than making it feel like a home. I suppose times had changed since then, but I couldn't help but feel like we were walking through a graveyard. This is the one, Benjamin said as we opened the door to the life support system. Unlike the neatly decorated hallways, that room was little more than a generator room with machines and metal walls. It produced oxygen directly from water through electrolysis, essentially an infinite source of breathable air, each showing habitability and biological activity. "No sign of life at all. I guess we're safe for now," Benjamin said. I lowered my guard ever so slightly while still staying alert. "It shouldn't be hard to fix this," Benjamin said. "Almost looks like someone purposefully sabotaged it, but they didn't do a very good job." "All right, we'll go ahead and repair the comms. Are you fine on your own?" Ulrich asked. Benjamin nodded. "Then let's go." Leaving our engineers behind, we kept moving toward the control room. "So, if the station went dark, but no one ever left, where are the bodies?" I asked. "Who knows if they got out? might have fled and stayed under the radar, Ulrich said. On the way, I took a peek inside a few of the already open doors. There were bedrooms and offices, all neatly decorated to look like home, with personal effects and unmade beds. If the crew had left, they clearly didn't bother to take anything with them. By the time we reached the central hub, about 20 minutes had passed. The station was massive, large enough to house at least 500 people, all of whom had just vanished without a trace. Then we walked by a door marked differently than the others. Z9, it read, a massive jump if the rooms were marked alphabetically. In addition, the room was labeled laboratory. Should we check it out? I asked. Later, we need to fix the comms and upload the data, Ulrich ordered. But as we tried to proceed through into the control room, we were met with a sealed door that had been fused shut. Someone really doesn't want to let us in there, Jacob said as he put down his bag of tools. But I can get through. Just give me 10 minutes. I suppose we could check out the lab in the meantime. There might be some valuable information in there, Ulrich said. The two of us entered the lab. It was impressively large, with rows of table and hundreds of vials and equipment neither of us could recognize. There were a few typewriters and what looked like ancient computers, probably only meant to decipher messages. The tables themselves were empty, except for one occupied by a lump hidden under a large plastic cover. Ulrich went to gather documents, while I went to the occupied table. I had to take a few steps back in pure shock as I dragged the sheet away. What lay beneath it was a disfigured being I couldn't even begin to recognize. It was about the size of a human with pale, smooth skin. In place of its head, it only had a hole with numerous long teeth that resembled blades more than chewing components. The only other appendages were 4 thick legs that ended in spiky bones and multiple holes all across its body that resembled gills. But what truly worried me was the multiple gunshot wounds it had suffered, all of which only penetrated an inch deep into its thick skin. The actual cause of death appeared to be a massive hole in its abdomen, but what had caused it, I don't know. What the hell is this? I asked. Ulrich turned around, holding on to a bunch of papers. His face lit up with confusion as he saw the horrific creature, but he didn't seem all that surprised. Listen to this, he began. 19th of October, 1978. The runners have infiltrated Sector A and B. We've managed to seal off the sections, but it's not going to hold for long. Ballistic projectiles have little effect, seeming only to briefly slow them down. The railgun has proven to eliminate the runners with moderate effect, but with only one still operational, we can't hold them all off. We've retrieved one of their bodies. Preliminary findings show that they're airless creatures. They filter oxygen directly through their multiple gills and have thick skin and unbreakable bones that... He trailed off. It just goes on to describe their anatomy, but check this out. They only flee when the secutor appears. As far as we know, there's only one of them, but it has proven impervious to all weapons. Should it break through the lockdown, we need to evacuate the station. He finished reading and just stared at me. What the hell is the secutor? I don't know, but we... Before I could finish that sentence, the sounds of fans broke the otherwise silent atmosphere, and with that, our radios lit up. Hey, it's Benjamin. I got the life support working. Don't take off your masks. It's going to take a few minutes until the air is breathable. All right, meet us in the control room, Ulrich said. We covered the mangled creature back up and went to meet Jacob, who'd already managed to break through the containment. The control room was a circular area with tons of radio equipment and workstations. The floor was littered with small pieces of what looked like old wood. I bent down to pick one of them up, only to realize they were shattered human bones. Guys, I think I found what remains of the crew, I said with a nervous voice. What the hell? Jacob chimed in. We'll be fine. The creatures have to be dead by now. Attach the transmitter to the comms, and let's upload all the data we can get. Jacob went to work with Ulrich as I guarded the room. I kept thinking back to the creature on the bed. Based on the log, it had already been there for decades. But if that was the case, why hadn't it decomposed? And were there others? What was the secutor? I took a peek at some of the documents Ulrich had taken with, but a section stood out to me, one on the very last page. 30th of October, 1978. They've broken down our evac systems. The handful of survivors that still remain are trapped. We're trying to send out a distress signal, but the surface isn't responding. The only solution we've found is to flood the station with carbon dioxide. It doesn't kill the creatures, but it seems to put them into an indefinite stasis. Our engineers are already en route to destroy the life support systems. The control room runs on a backup system, so we should be fine until help arrives. Based on the bones on the floor, it seemed like rescue never came. I listened to the fans humming and thought back to the fresh but ancient corpse. Just as I started to put the puzzle pieces together, another call came through the radio.
There's something in here with me. I can hear them in the walls.
Benjamin called out.
What are you talking about?
Ulrich asked back.
As soon as the oxygen rose, I started hearing knocks inside the locked rooms and walls. I thought it was the pipes or something at first, but then they started growling and... Wait, what the... Oh God, I see...
A brief scream was heard before the radio cut out, and Benjamin went dark.
Sean, you're coming with me. We gotta help Benjamin.
Ulrich ordered, but before we could even get going, we heard muffled growls coming from within the hall, and some coming from down the hall. Whatever Benjamin had seen, it was coming toward us in mass. Then, a few holes in the wall blew open without damaging the outer hull, and the first of the horrific creatures emerged.
We'll hold them off. Jacob, get those comms working now.
Ulrich yelled.
I'm on it.
Ulrich and I took position in front of the broken-up door and raised our rifles. A dozen creatures came running down the hall, with more emerging from the holes in the walls. Their gills pulsated as they inhaled the fresh oxygen that was being pumped into the station. Before we could even open fire, the hallway was full of monsters.
Where the hell did they come from?
Ulrich asked.
They were sleeping. The air woke them up. We did this.
I said. We unleashed a hail of bullets, most of which hit the creatures, but some went too far, forming holes in the wall. Luckily, the outer hull was far too thick to be penetrated. Our weapons were significantly more powerful than those used by the former inhabitants of the station, able to maim the creatures enough to render them harmless.
There's too many of the things.
I yelled over the sound of gunfire.
How much time do you need?
Ulrich asked.
It's already uploading. Let's get the hell out of here.
Jacob yelled. But escaping was easier said than done, and before long we'd been overrun by the creatures. Jacob joined in and emptied a magazine into the horde with little effect. One of them managed to get through and bounced off the wall to pound Ulrich. With a single bite, it ripped the flesh from Ulrich's arm. He let out an agonized yell as he fell to the ground. I walked straight up and put a bullet in what I assumed was its brain, which flung it to the ground. With that, every single creature froze in place. For a brief moment, the entire station had fallen into deafening silence. Then we heard it, a sickening, guttural growl coming from the distant hallways. It sounded almost human, but far too low-pitched, emitting a mixture between agonized pain and anger. Once the echo stopped, each and every one of the pale creatures retreated into the various holes and rooms of the station.
What the hell was that?
Jacob asked.
The secular, I take it.
Ulrich groaned as he tried to stop the bleeding with a makeshift tourniquet.
But let's not stick around to confirm it.
We quickly moved back toward the airlock, planning to destroy the life support systems before leaving for good. As we turned the corner, we found long streaks of blood that presumably belonged to Benjamin, alongside a few bullet holes in the wall.
Where'd they all go?
I asked. The station had fallen eerily silent in the wake of the creatures. We stopped for a moment just to get our bearings, when the silence was broken by a sickly crack that vibrated through the air. Though the echo made it hard to locate, it seemed to come from the direction of the airlock. We raised our rifles and proceeded with care. As we turned another corner, we found dozens of the creatures, all dead and torn to shreds. At the end of the hall stood a large humanoid figure with its back turned to us. It was the secular. It held one of the creatures in its unnaturally long arms, which ended in little more than bony knives. Jacob tried to point his rifle in its direction, but I signaled for him to stop. Based on the notes we'd read, bullets wouldn't do a thing. But despite our silence, the creature somehow seemed to sense our presence. It turned around, still holding on to the pale creature, Its face held little more than two massive black eyes and a poorly formed opening for a mouth. Covering its entire body was clearly visible red veins. It let out another growl as it ripped the runner to shreds before it dropped the pieces of flesh and started rushing in our direction. Jacob raised his rifle for the second time and started firing while Ulrich and I retreated deeper into the station.
Jacob, for God's sakes, run!
But he was frozen in shock, only able to keep his finger firmly pressed on the trigger until the magazine had emptied. By then, the creature had already reached him. It dug its hands into his torso with little effort and raised him into the air. Jacob let out a brief whimper, but had died before he even realized what was happening. Still, his death provided little more than a minute distraction for the creature, giving us almost no time to flee. We weren't going to be able to outrun the Secutor, and we both knew. As we passed one of the open rooms, Ulrich grabbed onto me with his remaining functioning arm.
Get out of here. Bomb the shit out of this place.
He said before pushing me into the room. With that, he too opened fire, hardly hitting anything other than the wall, but he wasn't aiming to hit the creature. He just wanted to draw its attention.
Run!
Was the last thing he said as he started retreating away from the airlock, luring the creature away from me. I'd been given a chance to escape, but it had come at the cost of Ulrich's life. I only allowed myself a second of hesitation before spurting to the airlock and our escape vessel. I sealed the hatch and tried my best to get the submarine moving with my limited knowledge. I took one final peek through the minuscule window, wondering if Ulrich had already been killed. Then I left Atlantis alone. The trip back was filled with a silence, only interrupted by the settling hull of the vessel. The mission had been completed, but so many questions still lingered, and I feared answers would be scant. At the surface, I gave my mission report and was paid handsomely as promised. Ulrich, Jacob, and Benjamin all died at the bottom of the ocean, all for a bit of intel that will remain classified until the end of time. I recommended they drop a nuke down there, but a part of me fears that we were never sent down there to retrieve research, but to confirm the existence of these horrific creatures. What they have planned for the future, I don't know, but I fear by delving down to the bottom of the ocean, we've awoken creatures that were never meant to be found. And if they are brought to the surface, that will be the end of life as we know it. The following is a transcription from the audio logs of Dr. Warren T. McCormick. Log number 63748.
Testing. Good.
Today's date is August 8th, 1998. I am attending therapist Dr. Warren T. McCormick. With me is the patient Darren Forrest. The patient has been admitted for 6 days now, with no attempt at speaking or communication of any kind in that time. Patient was found by the Coast Guard in a fishing vessel. No others on board. I will be attempting to diagnose any psychological trauma, as well as any account of what happened aboard the vessel. Darren, can you hear me? Yes. Would you be willing to tell me what happened aboard the ship? Tempest Fate? What happened to her? I'm hoping you can tell me that, Darren. You were found on board the Fate a week ago. None of the other crew have been seen since you left port a month ago. What happened to them? Jesus, they're gone. They're all gone. You couldn't find any of them? I'm afraid not. Do you know where they may have gone? God help them, wherever they went. It was a fate worse than hell. We were out there for about a week when it came up in the net. We figured it was just some accident, had fallen off a ship or something in transit. What is it exactly, Darren? What do you mean? It wasn't still there? Damn thing taunted me for what seemed like an eternity. Just there on the deck, waiting for me. There was nothing there when you were recovered. There was a fucking coffin right in the middle of the main deck. God damn it, how could it have not been there? can you please start from the beginning? I'm afraid I don't understand what you're trying to say. Fuck. Okay. So, we were out for almost a week, I think. Routine run, just like we had done 1,000 times. It was Friday? Maybe Thursday? I don't remember exactly. We pulled up the nets and dumped them onto the deck, the usual. This time, though, there was something big in one of the nets. Heard a big thump when it hit and crushed quite a few perfectly good fish. Hank, our first mate, he went over first to look at it. Turns out it was a damn coffin. We did some looking at it and noticed it was sealed up pretty tight. Captain Kern figured it had fallen off a transport boat or something. Maybe someone that died out of the country or something. Hell, maybe it was an old one from back in the day that got lost. Who the hell knows? Well, upon looking at it, we noticed it was sealed up good and tight. Big bunch of heavy chains wrapped around it and a big old lock holding it all together. Rusted and covered in sea grime. Had a bunch of nonsense carved into the top and sides of the wood. Wasn't any kind of language I'd ever seen. Did you open the coffin? God, no. Not then, at least. Me and Hank, we said we should throw it overboard. Captain Kern and Tommy, though, they said we should keep it and bring it into port. See what they wanted to do with it there. So, of course, the captain overruled us all. We tied the thing off on the deck and left it there all night. The dream started when we went to sleep later. It was surreal, like something out of an old pulp novel. I was on the deck and there was a storm moving in. As it got closer and the wind picked up, the rain started. It wasn't raining like normal, though. Fish fell from the sky, rotten, decaying fish. Some of them missing chunks or a head or entire bodies. Then the lightning flashed and there was something huge in the clouds that I could see. What happened to you in this dream? I woke up. There was another flash of lightning and I sat up so fast I about took my head off on the upper bunk. It was still dark out, so I got up and went to grab a drink from the galley. Noticed the door up to the deck was open, so I went to check it out. Captain and Tommy were up there with a pair of bolt cutters trying to open the damn box. I ran up there and asked them what the hell they thought they were doing. Captain just said there were valuables in it. Said he just knew it was something good. Like the coffin was calling out to him to open it or some shit like that. That was about the point the chains snapped from the bolt cutters and Tommy started throwing them all off. He gets all the damn chains off and takes a crowbar to the lid when it still won't open. By then, Hank had heard all the commotion and joined us up top. We were both pretty uneasy, looking at everything going on. This thing was shut tight, so someone obviously didn't want it to be opened for a reason. Turns out it was nailed shut. Big iron nails had been run through the outer perimeter of the lid, keeping it shut tight. Hell, I'm surprised any water was able to get in there. Tommy and Captain finally got it off of there, between the two of them each using a crowbar. Was there anything valuable inside? The patient lets out an audible shudder at this point and seems to tense up, drawing in sharp breaths. Nothing of value. No, just a body. Looked as fresh as the day it died. The thing was, the person in the coffin was standing right beside me on the deck. I'm afraid I don't follow. It was Hank. Hank was in the coffin, dead as a fucking doornail, but he was there. Poor guy. Looked in and immediately spewed his dinner all over the deck. It was so real. There's no way it wasn't Hank, you know? Even though he was standing right beside me. So that was it. After we saw that, we put the lid back on the thing and tied it down. Captain put some straps over the top to keep it closed since the nails weren't going back in. But the damage was done. Hank was in the coffin, and we didn't know what to make of what we had seen. I'm afraid that still doesn't explain the disappearance of your crewmates. Because I ain't got there yet. We all headed over to the galley and sat around the table for a bit, just passing a bottle of whiskey around and trying to rationalize what we had seen. None of us had a better explanation than some shared psychosis. God, if that's what it had been, I wouldn't be here right now. The sun rose red that morning. You familiar with sailor superstition, Doc? I'm not, no. Red sunrise means death is on the horizon. Always a bad sign, no matter what. We should have turned tail and taken our asses back to port right then and there, but Captain was determined to stick to schedule. We go that whole day with barely a damn fish coming up. The nets were practically empty and we were way behind our usual haul. As if all the commotion of the night before hadn't shaken us, though, this was setting us further back. So we decided to call it early, right around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, instead of sunset like we usually do. Everyone meets for an early dinner, then goes off to their separate quarters to sleep. The damn dream started again for me, though. This time it was raining all these damn fish from the sky, and that big thing in the sky seemed even closer. I don't remember much of it, but there was something different in this one. I looked over the deck into the water. All these damn fish were falling from the sky, and out there in the surf were hundreds of bodies, maybe thousands. They were packed in tight, almost blocking any view of the actual water. God, I still remember their faces. All of them. Men, women, children, all facing upward with this look of pure horror on their faces. Mouths open in the loudest scream I couldn't hear over the storm. The thing that shook me, though, was their eyes. They didn't have any. None of them. Eyes were clawed out, and all that was left were the bloody pits where they once were. You could still see it, though. The wide look and the eyelids pinned open in fear. They died in terror, seeing whatever had taken their vision coming straight for them. I woke up because of the screaming. The wind was howling outside, and the rain was lashing the boat from every direction, but that scream pierced through all of it. I scrambled out of bed and up to the deck without missing a beat. Managed to almost break my ankle going up the stairs while I was at it. Hell, I wish I had. Would have kept me from seeing what happened. Captain and Tommy each had one of Hank's arms, dragging him over to the coffin. There was blood all over the deck too, getting scattered by the rain and sea foam washing over it, but it was there, leaving a crimson hue over the whole boat. When they reached the coffin, Tommy held Hank while Captain undid the straps and pushed the lid off. The thing that was inside wasn't Hank anymore. It was like a mass of ocean grime. I could see shells embedded in parts of it, seaweed and urchins clinging in other parts. The worst thing was that it was blinking. All over the body were eyes, all blinking at different times and darting in every direction. Hank was moaning in front of the coffin while the thing rose up out of it like some old vampire movie. Damn thing looked like it slithered out of there, one fluid motion. Suddenly it was standing right in front of Hank and reaching straight for him. Poor bastard, he tried to scream, but Tommy ran a knife straight across his throat before he could make a sound. The thing from the coffin just put out its hands and just took him. 1 second he was there, and the next he was almost absorbed into it. Then Captain and Tommy just stood there looking at it while it kept looking everywhere. And that was it. Fucking hell. They cut out their own eyes next. Both of them. Pulled out some damn oyster knives they must have taken from the kitchen. Oyster knives are dull as hell, meant for just prying the shells open. They took the knives and... They popped their own damn eyes out and gave them to the thing like a fucking offering. Then they just walked straight off the side of the boat into the ocean. I wasn't sticking around there any longer. I ran back to my damn bunk and locked myself in. Had a gun in my footlocker that I pulled out and cradled. God knows if it would do me any good, but if push came to shove, I would rather a bullet than whatever that thing did to Hank. I remember seeing the sun come up through the little porthole in my room. I waited until it was at least noon the next day before I tried to go check. The coffin was still there. The damn thing still out there standing beside it, just looking in all directions still. I know it saw me. I could feel the eyes follow me as I went back down, as long as it didn't come after me. I stayed in the quarters from then on, only making the occasional run when the sun was at its peak to bring food back with me. I would peek out every once in a while and that thing would still just be standing out there, just staring. Sometimes at night I would hear it whispering, like it was calling to me. Those were the nights I kept the muzzle of the gun pressed to my temple the entire time, telling myself to pull the trigger but pussying out at the last second. It was speaking to me. I couldn't understand the language, but I knew it was sinister. A few times I would look out the porthole of my quarters. It was situated just below the water so I could see fish pass by and the sun filter through the waves. Some nights Tommy and Captain would be out there, looking in at me with their hollow eye sockets, a big smile on their faces. They were waterlogged and decaying already, skin waxing and peeling from their bones. Captain tried to scratch the glass one night and I saw his fingernails break right off. I covered the window after that. Everything after that is a blur. I remember the Coast Guard coming into the boat and shouting for me. I thought it was just that damned thing playing a trick to get me out. I wasn't having it. It wasn't until they busted in the door and wrestled the gun away from me that I finally let go. I don't think I had slept in days. Doc, you said they didn't find the coffin when they got me. That is correct. God knows what we did setting that damn thing loose. I hope I don't have to see it. This ends the interview. My professional opinion is that the patient believes the story he is telling. He is highly delusional, still speaking of continued dreams and a coming great flood that he saw in his dreams. I recommend intensive therapy as well as institutionalization until rehabilitated. This is the end of this tape. There's still boxes of these damn things to go through. I'll update when I find anything else good. You're 240 feet underwater, floating in darkness by the entrance to a deep cave. Before it stands a sign with large block letters and a simple warning: stop, prevent your death, go no further. Though eerie, you're an experienced individual with a license as an advanced open water diver with several trips within caves. You proceed, ready to map out, thus far, unexplored regions. Only a trimix tank and a mouthpiece keeping you from an unpleasant demise. Proceeding within, you are shocked by the overwhelming darkness. You turn on your flashlight, which gives you a good view of the clear waters, but it also creates a bizarre sense of being trapped within the narrow passages. A line has been attached by the entrance, serving as a passive guide into the network before you. The plan is to extend deeper into the network of caves, but should you lose it, there is no calling for help, no turning back, no hope. You'll get trapped, panic, and inevitably drown. Despite this, you keep moving, deeper and deeper into the darkness. You eventually reach the end of the marked path, not even noticing the slight decline leading even further into the depths of the ocean. After 30 minutes in the cave, you check your residual pressure gauge, estimating the time you have left before surfacing becomes an absolute necessity. Within your trimix tank and a reserve, you have just over 2 hours underwater. 1/3 was reserved for the journey downwards into the cave, which happened so far without incident, leaving a generous margin of error. The second third is being spared for the upward trip, with a last third saved as a reserve. Then, you glance at your dive computer, which lets you know that the depth has increased to almost 300 feet. Surprised, but not worried, you attach another point of the line, ensuring an easy trek back to the surface. Below you lie a ground void of all life, just fine dirt and sand dragged in by the current. But while fishing up the line attachment, your tool slips, sinking down towards the sand. You react instinctively, pushing towards the bottom just a tad harder than intended. Though you're still in control, Your sudden movement dislodges the dirt from the ground, causing a sudden silt out. Left blind, your heart starts to race and your respiration rate quickens. Adrenaline is the culprit, but you need to get it under control, lest the air in your tank run out prematurely. Falling back on your training, you know you just need to find the line and pull yourself back to clear waters. You reach out your hand, knowing you left the line right above you, but there's nothing there to grab onto. The horrific realization does nothing but deepen your panic. You push upwards, frantically searching for your only rescue, but the network of caves is far more complex than you first anticipated. You end up swimming further and further away from the exit, away from the one guide you had. Minutes pass, ticking down with the pressure gauge, counting away the oxygen left in your tank. By some miracle, you manage to escape the silt cloud. You can finally see, and just for a moment, you start to calm down. That is, until you realize that you haven't the faintest idea where you are. You peer down to notice you only have 1/3 of your oxygen left, the last third you so desperately need for the ascent. Being nowhere near the exit, surviving has become a statistical impossibility. Though you're technically still alive, your death has been marked as a fixed point in history. It's only a matter of time before your air runs out and you drown, cold and alone in the depths of the ocean. These are the harrowing experiences turning many a diver away from the dangers of the deep waters, and the few lucky enough to survive such an incident would most certainly swear to never set foot in the ocean again. But among those, a select few react with the exact opposite response, gaining a profound attraction to the concept of diving, needing to prove themselves against all odds. After surviving one of these cave incidents years prior, my soul was bound to the depths. In response, I took up rescue diving, swearing on my own grave to protect others from suffering the same horrific fate. Hey mate, ocean's that way, David pointed out as we headed in the direction of Darwell Woods.
Yeah? Well, I'm just a pilot. Take it up with the team leader.
The man shot back, barely audible over the sound of the helicopter rotor whirring above us. Below were endless fields of green, with a dense forest just beginning to appear on the horizon, a spectacle to be witnessed from such a height, but in spite of its beauty, I longed for the dark depths below. David turned to the rest of us, lowering his voice in annoyance. Is he serious? Did he see us bored with diving gear? What does he think we're doing?
There's water in the woods too, David. If the kid is drowned, it's up to us to retrieve the body.
If the kid has drowned, it's no longer an emergency.
Andrew chimed in. Though callous, the man had a point. We'd been scooped up as an emergency response team, hearing the news of a young boy that had gone missing in the center of Darwell, presumably trapped underwater. Though details were scant, I too wondered why we were heading for the woods. It was an area I knew intimately through many excursions over the years, which is why I knew the place had no large bodies of water, lakes nor rivers.
What do you think, Rick?
Maya asked, pulling me out of my deep contemplation. Well, I'm just trying to figure out where we're supposed to dive, and how deep the place could possibly be to warrant a dive team.
There aren't any lakes in Darwell Woods,
Andrew explained confidently.
Lived around these parts all my life. Never seen a damn lake. We're going somewhere else.
He'd caught our attention, because though we'd explicitly been recruited for a rescue dive in an area with no oceans nor lakes, Andrew didn't seem all that surprised.
Oh, man of old age and great wisdom, please share with us your nuggets of information.
Andrew, being his usual self, didn't even acknowledge Maya's quip. He just looked at each of us, as if asking a wordless question uttered only in silence.
We're not just recreational divers. Hell, we're not even open water divers. We are cave divers.
He then turned to me with a half smile on his face.
Or what do you think, boss?
Though the thought had crossed my mind, it wasn't an idea that sat easy with me. A hidden cave in the forest might have gotten waterlogged during one of the many recent storms, but the aspect of an unexpectedly drowned cave came with many unforeseen risks, such as strong currents, mudslides, and cave-ins. And while I had no trepidation swimming around underwater caves, one caused by flash floods sent shivers down my spine. We'd been flying for an hour before we reached Darwell Woods. gliding through the air at a low altitude, heading for a set of given coordinates in the dead center of the forest. I started to wonder how we could possibly land in such dense vegetation, but as we neared our destination, a large opening I'd never seen before revealed itself, one practically designed for aerial rescues. Small figures started to appear amid the trees, wearing bright, reflective vests. A couple of them came running out into the clearing, waving at us to put the helicopter down. After a rough landing, we were met with half a dozen rescue workers. We stepped out with our tanks of various gas mixtures, wetsuits, and masks, met with almost relief by the crew greeting us. Who's in charge here?" The crew turned to a scruff-looking, middle-aged man who promptly introduced himself as Graham. He shook my hand and thanked us for coming, before gesturing for us to follow him towards the objective, situated half a mile within the forest. Luckily, the team helped us with the transportation of our heavy equipment, allowing us to gather strength for the mission. Once we started walking, Graham finally started to shed some light on the situation.
"We were called 2 days ago after a 10-year-old kid went missing while camping in the woods with his parents. Leaving no trace behind, his parents had no choice but to seek help. But with no signal reaching this far into the wilderness, his dad decided to sprint the entire distance, until finally coming upon a small town, where he borrowed a landline to call us. By then, of course, nightfall had arrived, making the search almost impossible. Having no luck recovering the kid's tracks, we figured he'd been snatched up by some predator or fallen off a cliff. It wasn't until the break of dawn that we realized how close to camp he actually had been."
Once we'd reached the rescue site, we were met by 24 rescue workers and evacuation equipment. A pile of dirt stood in the center, left behind as they'd been digging down for something I could only assume was a thus far undiscovered cave.
Turns out, the ground around these parts is riddled with underwater rivers, creating a massive network of waterlogged caves, one of which the kid accidentally stepped into through a 2-foot-wide hole hidden beneath some shrubs. A hole just large enough for a skinny kid to slip into, but too small for a grown adult. Now we've been working on expanding the hole for our team to go down and extract the boy, but...
That's all very unfortunate, but where do we come in?" David asked impatiently. He came across rude, but I could tell he was just nervous about the aspect of diving into waterlogged caves created by strong currents. It wasn't a situation we stepped into lightly. Graham stopped dead in his tracks, annoyed by the interruption.
"If you'd let me finish,"
he almost demanded. David looked at me for confirmation. I just gave him a gentle nod. It was a polite gesture to make him shut up, and command he diligently followed.
To better assess the area we were about to enter, and to get proof of life, we sent down a camera attached to a rope. The hole extends 27 feet below ground in a narrow tunnel, before opening up into a massive chamber, which extended another 50 feet down into a large pool of water, which depths we're unsure of.
"And the boy?"
He survived the fall, and had even managed to swim to a small plateau along one of the cave walls. He's been sitting there for more than a day, waiting for a rescue.
Graham went on, but didn't seem relieved by the statement. "You're not happy about finding him alive?"
Well, we were ecstatic, but that deep down we had no means of communicating with him effectively, and expanding the hole to be large enough for an adult to descend through would take hours. So, we pulled the camera back up and packed up a survival kit with water, food, heating blankets, and the like. We left him alone down there for another hour and a half while preparing it all, before sending it back down alongside the camera and a walkie.
"And?" I kept pushing, noticing a prominent feeling of unease in his voice.
The boy was gone.
Gone? Gone where?
We don't know. The water levels hadn't risen, and there were no other visible ledges to hold on to. It was as if he'd entered the water again just to drown. All he'd left behind was the backpack he'd worn during the fall.
Before Graham continued, he was approached by one of the rescue workers, who announced that the expansion had been completed. The hole now stretched 4 feet wide, more than enough for us to descend with diving equipment, but the hope of finding the boy alive was all but lost. "Graham, when did you last see the boy?"
4 hours ago. That's when we requested the rescue divers.
Pardon my bluntness, but what makes you think we can save him at this stage? He paused, scratching his head in uncertainty of what he was about to say next.
The ground below is highly porous, as I said, and we suspect there are several other chambers connected by a network of caves. Our main theory is that the kid slipped into the water, got caught up by the current. If he was lucky, he might have ended up in another air-filled chamber.
I wouldn't bet on it.
Maybe not, but until we have a body, we're going with the assumption that he's still alive. So the question is, are you up for the task?
I turned to my team, standing stoically behind me. Apart from Andrew, neither of them wished for this particular job, but none were willing to back down from a challenge, dangerous as it might be. Alas, with the limited information we had, it was my task to decide whether or not we'd risk our lives for a boy that almost certainly had perished in the waters below. As bleak as the situation might seem, as long as a sliver of hope remained, we had to try. We'll go down. A glimpse of relief appeared in Graham's eyes as he gestured toward the pile of dirt lying next to the hole into the abyss.
Right this way.
We promptly gathered around the 4-foot-wide hole in the ground, which extended down into an impossibly dark abyss. For a moment, my thoughts wandered to the young boy, whose name I hadn't even bothered to ask. To me, he'd just been another body to recover. But a part of me inexplicably clung to hope. I felt as if he still survived down in the caves, surviving the elements against all odds, in the dark, alone, cold, and afraid. Rick? You ready? I nodded, making sure my equipment was firmly secured to my person, before getting ready to attach myself to the harness. A metal tripod stood above the hole, with a winch ready to slowly lower us down into the cave with our diving equipment and body cams.
I'm going in fast,
Andrew announced, grappling his harness to the cable. While Andrew was the oldest, and by far the most experienced member of the team, he wasn't the leader. It was a fact he was prone to forget, unwilling or ashamed to take orders from a younger man. We locked our eyes, silently battling over control, but he stood firm, patiently waiting for me to comment on his insubordination.
Just making sure the place is safe before you descend, boss. You'll take the lead from there.
He half suggested, half ordered. Go ahead then, I said, knowing an argument would do little more than delay the already sensitive mission. Once Andrew had vanished into the darkness, I followed suit. The winch whirred to life, slowly lowering me into the hole. On the way down, my equipment gently hit the edge of the rocky wall, causing me to squeeze my body tighter around the cable. I took a deep breath, preparing to be swallowed by the ground, the first bout of worry setting in my bones. Within a minute, I'd been completely engulfed by darkness. I activated my flashlight, inspecting the rocky surroundings that seemed to narrow in around me with each descending foot. Though not a claustrophobic person underwater, the bizarre echoes reverberating through the air-filled caves sent shivers down my spine, every whir of the winch and every crumple of rock loudly shooting through the air. Then, as I finally passed the threshold into the chamber, the walls expanded in all directions. I exited the narrow tunnel to find myself suddenly hanging in an enormous void of complete darkness. Below, I heard a soft splashing sound from Andrew moving around in the water, 50 feet below. Andrew? I called down. How's it looking down there? No response. The splashes had already fallen silent, which meant he'd descended underwater to inspect the area. All without waiting for the rest of his team. Annoyed, but not surprised, I spent my remaining descent scanning my surroundings. The space felt impossibly large, too large and wide for my beam to hit all edges of the cave. Even the plateau lining the water's surface lay shrouded in darkness, only visible due to the reflective surface of the boy's backpack. And as I got a tad further down, I noticed Andrew's nitrox tank and mouthpiece also resting on the plateau. Andrew? I called out, realizing he'd gone under without his diving equipment. The distraction was enough that I couldn't prepare myself for the impact with the ice-cold water, which sent a shockwave through my body, even with the wetsuit protecting me. I quickly detached myself from the harness and swam towards the plateau, searching the depths below for Andrew's flashlight. Just as I started to worry, Andrew emerged from below the surface, jumping onto the plateau with ease, turning to me with his trademark smirk plastered across his face.
What the hell were you doing?
I asked, as relieved as annoyed by the man's antics.
Sorry, boss. Just assessing the caves.
He said in between breaths.
You were supposed to wait.
I explained firmly.
Just trying to save us some time.
He shot back. Putting aside the disobedience, I refocused on the task ahead, trying to avoid another staring contest with a man too stubborn to be reasoned with.
What did you find?
2 tunnels. One on the east side, one on the northwestern edge. Both extend further down below. There's a mild current pulling between them, leading into the northwestern tunnel.
Anything else?
Yeah, some small animal carcasses scattered around. Victims of the hole, I suppose.
As Andrew described the situation, Maya and David both descended into the waters, gently splashing into it.
Damn, it's cold.
Maya exclaimed, rushing over to the plateau. We gathered around the solid surface. Andrew repeated what he'd discovered.
We're going to head down the northwestern passage, follow the current to find the kid. Just follow our regular protocol, and we'll be back before dinner.
So you're in charge now?
I asked, immediately ashamed that I let him get to me. He glared back in return, enjoying the fact that he could get a rise out of me. Truth be told, there was a reason I'd been hired as the diving leader over Andrew. A reason from his past he didn't know I was privy to. One I struggled with all my might not to reveal to him.
Whoa, a dick measuring contest?
David asked, trying to break the tension.
Should I get a ruler or should we focus on the job? I'd get a ruler to be honest, but I left it on the chopper. So in the interest of saving time, maybe we should get going?
Using David's joke as an excuse to break eye contact with Andrew, I returned my gaze to the water and sighed.
Fine, what Andrew said. I'll take the lead. Never break line of sight. You got it?
Yes, sir.
Maya said, none to follow her example. With that, we inserted our mouthpieces and dove under the surface. In the darkness, our flashlights were the sole method guiding our way. The water was perfectly clear, allowing our beams to hit the bottom on each side. Only when shined directly into the tunnel did the reach of the beam prove insufficient. The animal carcasses Andrew had described were mere skeletons without even a hint of flesh left behind, but they didn't appear all that old, as if something had fed off the meat and left the bones behind. Though a peculiar thought, I had no way of communicating it with the team except to point and gesture, which wouldn't have served any purpose but to worry them further, so I ignored the sight, leading my team into the northwestern passage with Andrew swimming by my side. Withstanding the current proved to be an easy enough task, and I turned around frequently to make sure the team didn't split up. Maya swam in the middle, with David at the back, carrying the end of a line still attached to the plateau. Should we end up getting lost, we only had to follow the cable back to safety. After a few minutes, following a gentle descent, the passage took a steep dive into the abyss. From there, it split up into several smaller tunnels, with the largest of them all being the only way to head straight down. The current we decided to follow, of course, took the path downwards. I glanced at my depth gauge, which displayed a depth of 32 feet. It reassured me, knowing we still had almost 100 feet to work with before being forced to ascend. We paused, with the rest of the team turning to me as they awaited orders. I nodded, turning to dive down further as the depth gauge counted up. We moved with the current through the descending passage, ignoring any diverting tunnels, twisting and turning into a messy network of caves. We only stopped once every so often to attach the rescue line along the wall. At 70 feet down, I noticed something different hanging alongside the otherwise lifeless cave wall. A deep red vine clinging to the crumbly wall's surface, with small roots digging into the side, resembling blood vessels. A sort of plant I'd never before seen, existing where no life was supposed to have developed. I pointed to the thing, more curious than anything, but the rest of the team seemed uninterested, all eager to keep the descent going. Once we reached 80 feet, the pit finally turned horizontally with a slight downward slope. Several side passages extended on each side, some even returning back up into dead ends. More vines hung along the walls, each bigger than the last, stretching out from the tunnel we were following. Wondering how its surface felt, I decided to touch one of them. It was squishy, but rough, like hundreds of threads tied together, akin to exposed muscle. It twitched in response, releasing its roots from the walls and retracting ever so slightly. I realized then that it wasn't a plant, but some sort of fleshy appendage appearing to feed off the wall. While distracted by the odd growth, Andrew had taken the lead. He delved further into the tunnel with Maya and David in tow, the latter just giving me a quick glance to ensure I didn't fall too far behind. Having no voice to order a halt, I had no choice but to follow behind. By then, we had already been in the water for 40 minutes, carefully following the main current through the network of caves. 1/3 of our allotted time had passed, though finding our way back would be an easy task. With a safety line guiding our way, we weren't about to turn back anytime soon. On the chase to take the lead from Andrew, I realized just how narrow the passage had gotten. Even if I sped up, I had no way of getting past the rest of the team without risking getting stuck, so I was left in the back, waiting for a path to open up once again. Distracted by the increasingly claustrophobic cave, I failed to keep a close eye on the depth gauge. With the slope going at an almost invisible decline, I didn't really think much of it. Not until I started to notice the first signs of nitrogen narcosis, an undying feeling of anxiety not warranted at that stage during the mission. Unknown to us, we'd managed to reach a depth of 150 feet, a fact the rest of the team hadn't appeared to notice, despite our many experiences with exactly such situations. I reached out to touch David's foot, only to notice him getting pulled away by the increasing strength of the current. Then, the passage came to a sudden end, leading into another pit in the ground, one which Andrew dove headfirst into, going deeper into the cave. I tried to brake, hoping they'd notice, but the current pulled me in as well. It plopped us into a large underground chamber. Once more, I felt as if we were floating in a void of vast darkness, with the bottom of the room endlessly far below, out of reach of our lights. We were now 200 feet below the surface, with God knows how much space beneath us. On the roof above us, I noticed how thick the growths had gotten, turning from vines to massive stems with dark veins running along them, leading deeper into the caves. They pulsated along the wall, sucking the little nutrients they could from the walls. I waved at the team, starting to feel the effects of nitrogen narcosis take a hold of my body. Where the rest of the team might have felt a drunken sense of confidence, I was suffering the opposite effect. I wanted to abort the mission and return to the surface, but Andrew was fixated on the idea of reaching the cave's end. He gestured to a point far off on the other side of the chamber where the current seemed to be leading us. There hung a faint light emerging from another opening in the cave's walls. Though within reach of the remaining air we had, it meant a further descent of about 50 feet. It was a risk I wasn't willing to take without suitable gas. While Andrew kept wordlessly insisting, Maya and David drifted to my side, both realizing the dangerous situation we were about to enter. If we kept diving, we risked getting disoriented enough to lose our orientation, ending with the four of us drowning in a cold tomb. Knowing he stood no chance of convincing us, Andrew started following us back up to the hole in the chamber ceiling, where we'd secured the last line attachment. But before we could reach the hole, David, too, noticed the bizarre growths on the walls. He got closer to inspect them, reaching out his hand and gently touching them. In response, a dozen smaller roots detached from the wall, but instead of retracting away like I'd witnessed in the shallower parts, these roots reached for David, rapidly wrapping themselves around him. With Maya and Andrew already swimming through the exit in the ceiling, they didn't notice David's struggle. Large amounts of dust and dirt emerged from the crumbly walls where the roots detached, causing an instant silt-out. I tried flashing my lights at the rest of the team, but the emerging fog was too thick for my beam to penetrate, so I pulled the knife from my belt and started slashing at the vines wrapping around David. The growths were easy enough to cut through, but the sheer number of them made it a futile task, and with more emerging, pulling David further down into the depths, I knew I stood no chance of saving him. Still, in absolute desperation, David latched onto my hand, pulling me down with him. Again, I tried to cut the vines away from him, but in the chaos, I managed to drop my knife, letting it sink into the infinite abyss below. Getting a final glance at the depth gauge as we got pulled down, I realized we were just shy of 300 feet below the surface. Nitrogen narcosis had become an absolute certainty. I felt my body grow weaker, terror setting in my soul alongside a sense of absolute hopelessness. I could tell David was experiencing the same effects because his grip slowly loosened, finally letting go of me before the creature snatched him away towards the light in the wall. There I hung in the void, no longer knowing which way was up or down. I could feel my mind quickly fading away, darkness occupying my peripheral vision. I knew then that I was going to drown. But then I felt something wrap around my arm, reaching out through the cloud of silt. Not a vine, but a hand, pulling me away. Too confused to understand, much less fight it, I let my mind slip into a deep state of sleep, no longer worried what would happen to me. Seconds, minutes, even hours could have passed before I finally regained consciousness. I was still underwater, being dragged through narrow tunnels, with the depth gauge showing a slowly decreasing number on my wrist. I looked up to find Andrew pulling me by the arms, dragging me back to safety. Once we finally breached the surface, Maya and Andrew wrapped me in my harness and attached me to the cable. As I ascended up from the cave, I started to regain my senses. I wondered what I'd seen down there, if it had been a product of my feeble mind in the depths, or if it had been real. But David had been taken. That wasn't a hallucination, and I failed to save him. The rescue team in the forest immediately tended to me, but the nitrogen narcosis had caused no lasting damage. And as the rest of my team reached the surface, the initial despair and confusion had turned to something else entirely, an incessant feeling of anger. "You killed him," I mumbled, still too weak to shout. Andrew approached me, bent down to my level, and spoke in a hushed tone.
What was that?
"It was your fault. You killed David." I let out an accusation directed at him for failing to check his depth gauge.
I just saved your life,
Andrew said as he helped me up on my two legs. "A life that wouldn't have needed saving if you just let me take the lead."
I was trying to find that damned kid.
I paused, noticing a crowd of people gathering around us. Though they hadn't yet heard the content of our argument, it was easy to notice the animosity between the two of us. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice to a mere whisper. "You know, this is why I'm in charge. Don't think for a second that I don't know about your past reckless behavior. This is what happens when you're the one in charge."
Stop it, please.
Maya said, coming between us.
What happened to him? Where's David?
Ending our standoff, we both turned to Maya, neither sure how to explain why David hadn't come back with us. I began, still not entirely sure what I'd experienced down in the depths. The growths, he was taken by them.
What?
Maya asked, confused.
David got lost in the silt out. I couldn't find him. He must have followed the light in the depths, thinking it was one of our flashlights.
"That's not what happened," I shot back, almost yelling. "These things down there, they wrapped around him and pulled him away." The rescue team stood idly by, staring at us in disbelief. None of them had realized just how deep the caves were, much less could they comprehend the horrors that existed within the network. Though I must have come across as crazy, I no longer cared.
It was a hallucination caused by the nitrogen narcosis,
Andrew responded, but his usual confidence seemed just a tad faded. With him diving into the silt to save my life, he too must have seen the tendrils wriggling around. He just wasn't ready to admit it. Even so, I paused to consider the fact that David might just have drowned. I looked to Andrew, clear doubt filling my eyes, a fact that just strengthened my own resolve. It had to have been real.
I made a mistake,
Andrew finally admitted.
I didn't notice the decline within the cave. And because of that, David got swept away.
He went on, directing his attention to the entire rescue operation in a ruse to regain some control of the situation.
We're not giving up, because amidst the chaos, we found an air pocket just 50 feet deeper than we managed to get. If David truly did follow the light, he might still be alive. Hell, with the current leading directly past it, I'd bet on the kid being in there too.
Whatever Andrew was playing at, it didn't put me at ease. Down at these depths, there was no way either of them had survived. Even if the light did emerge from an air pocket, who's to say it held breathable air?
It's not over yet,
he said as a final note before leaving the crowd behind to get more equipment. What are you doing?
getting Trimix gas.
For what purpose? Anger arose within me. As if David's death hadn't been enough, Andrew still seemed to intend another futile dive into the horrors of the depths. But it wasn't until he confirmed it before a whole new world of fear came crashing over me, and as he spoke these words, I realized that our nightmare was far from over.
What do you think, Rick? We're going to get David back.
Do you actually think David's still alive?
Maya asked as I strapped on a fresh tank of Trimix gas. Though slightly heavier, it would allow us to reach far greater depths within the cave without running the risk of nitrogen narcosis. Not a lot of time had passed since our quick ascent back to the surface, and though it hardly sufficed for a second dive, we didn't have time to waste. I'm sorry, Maya, but I don't think so. I saw him get taken.
By what?
There was something else down there in the water. I couldn't tell you what it was, and I'm not sure I even want the answer to that question. Maya turned to Andrew for confirmation. He strapped some tape around his knee, which ached after the rapid ascent. He'd wounded it 2 years prior due to an air embolism caused by a rapid ascent. He was eavesdropping on our conversation. He noticed Maya's trepidation in returning to the depths, worried more that we might perish in the effort.
It'll be fine,
he said with an odd sense of confidence.
I wouldn't ask you to do this unless I truly believed David was alive. Just let me go first. If something goes wrong down there, just turn back and leave. Don't risk your life on my count.
Though the words felt genuine, they weren't directed at me. There was still a prominent sense of resentment hanging in the air between the two of us, but having no choice but to work with me, Andrew attached himself to the cable without further quarrel and initiated a second descent into the depths below. Once he was out of sight, Maya got ready to follow, purposefully placing herself between Andrew and I in a futile attempt at preventing further conflict. I pushed her aside, not ready to let her descend unless she knew the exact risks involved in the mission. You don't have to do this, Maya. I can do this alone with Andrew. She shook her head.
David was my friend too. If he's alive, I have to try.
I understand, but this is going to be dangerous. I just need you to know that, I explained, noting her use of past tense in describing our lost crewman.
Of course I know. David wouldn't have gotten lost if it wasn't dangerous. I'm aware of the risks. Rick, just let me go.
I couldn't stop you even if I tried. I chuckled, trying to brighten the mood, but Andrew is going first on this one. I just need you to watch out around him. If he tries going too deep again, don't follow. It's not worth the risk. She gave me a gentle nod before attaching herself to the cable. A second descent had started, and she kept eye contact with me up until the very moment she got enveloped in the darkness. I was the last in line, being spared the struggle of leadership following my nitrogen injury. Still, I followed the two of them down into the caves, not sure if any of us would ever return. Hit by the freezing temperature of the water once again, I let out a few gasps in shock as I prepared to submerge. I quickly inserted my mouthpiece, letting the Trimix gas fill my lungs as I dove under. Attached to my belt hung the end of the safety line we'd attached during our prior trip. Through it, we'd be able to send our video and audio feed in lieu of wireless connections. Though direct contact remained impossible, at least the surface crew should know what happened to us should we fail to resurface. We followed the northwestern passage again, quickly descending with the aid of the safety line, not needing to think twice about the paths we could take. But even though we'd been down there only an hour or so prior, the atmosphere within the tunnels had noticeably changed. The same fleshy growths we'd encountered last time had reached much shallower parts of the cave. Worried, I pointed them out to Maya and Andrew, signaling as best I could to not touch them under any circumstances. They both nodded in agreement, and we carefully proceeded downwards into the pit. The narrow corridors preceding the open chamber were completely entangled in the growths, narrowing the lumen even further, as if the walls were progressively closing in on each other. It made it almost impossible to traverse without disturbing the vines, causing us to graze them on many occasions. Luckily, the smaller ones just retracted into the wall without prompting an attack. It appeared that only the thick, well-developed growths maintained the ability to harm. Even so, total avoidance remained our chosen strategy. Next, we delved into the open chamber. As before, the vast emptiness hung below us, a harrowing sight without a visible end. Transfixed, I felt shivers crawling down my spine, wondering what kind of nightmares existed in the depths. Checking my dive computer, I noted that we'd returned to 200 feet below the surface. Had we still carried nitrox tanks, we'd have started to experience the advanced stages of nitrogen narcosis, but with Trimix, we still had quite a distance to go. For now, we remained safe. At the front of our pack floated Andrew, unimpressed and unbothered by the abyss below. His mind was fixated only on the strange light emerging from the hole in the wall, but at least this time, he waited for the rest of us to follow him deeper into the caves. He would frequently turn around and wave for us to hurry up and join him, never straying out of sight. Though I appreciated the sentiment, I wasn't sure if it was a strategy of self-preservation or teamwork. But as I made my way towards the opening, something down in the depths caught my attention, just barely visible from the absolute deepest part of the chamber. There, several hundred feet below, I noticed several cold blue lights dangling in the water, almost dancing around each other in a captivating symphony. A loud rumble emerged from their origin like an ancient voice crying out into the void. I glanced at my team, wanting to wildly gesture and announce my discovery, but my body refused to cooperate, paralyzed by the distressing sight below. The more I stared, the more I felt my body succumb to an unknown force. I tensed up, frozen from a sense of dread that only increased the further I descended. While Maya and Andrew had headed straight for the cave, I fell behind, unable to drag my gaze away from the depths. I started to sink, so desperately trying to fight back. But instead of fearing my incoming demise, I felt oddly relaxed, almost welcoming death as a dear old friend. My depth gauge counted up, quickly reaching 300 feet, 310, 320. In mere minutes, I'd be overcome with narcosis, leaving my body forever in the depths. But before reaching the point of no return, both Maya and Andrew rushed over to pull me back to shallower parts. Breaking the line of sight with the lights, I finally snapped back to attention, trying to convey what I'd just seen with body language alone, but it was no use, and once I glanced back down, the lights quickly faded away. I had been lured in by their glow and would have diligently sunk to my death if not for the quick intervention from my team. Confused, I tried to refocus on the mission. I followed Andrew back towards the opening in the cave wall, ready to figure out if the place truly held an oxygen bubble that could have kept David and the young boy alive. Gone were the claustrophobic halls of the northwestern passage. Instead, we followed the current into a large tunnel filled with beautiful warm light. It emerged from plant-like structures on the wall, stems extending with yellow bulbs at the end, each bulb covered in villi wriggling around the water, snatching up small particles. Like the vines on the wall, their touch resembled that of exposed muscle, clearly a part of the same ecosystem as the flesh vines. We hovered in place, all in awe of its beauty. Though seemingly harmless, we tried our best to refrain from touching them, though an occasional graze still occurred without consequence. For a moment, we just existed in their world, experiencing a delightful sense of peace, as if the dangers of the depths no longer posed a threat. But with our residual pressure gauge slowly ticking down, we decided to keep moving, floating through the brightly lit hallway. The malignant vine still existed among the lights, but appeared to be held back by the glowing bulbs. Only a few dared to stretch out into the tunnel's lumen, looking for anything that might float by. In the distance, an odd reflection appeared on the cave ceiling, one we immediately recognized as the water's surface. Against all odds, an air pocket had formed in the waterlogged caves, existing in almost impossible conditions, but whether the gases within were breathable was a question left unanswered. All we could do was pray as we proceeded with haste, clinging on to the slim possibility of David still being alive. But something happened as we neared the surface, a change almost imperceivable at first, as if the lights were starting to dim. Maya was the first to take note, turning around to assess the situation. Sure enough, the bulbs that had basked us in warmth only moments before were starting to retract into the wall, causing the cave to progressively darken, and as they pulled back, the vines started to emerge en masse. Within mere seconds, the cave opening had completely closed up by the sheer number of vines blocking our only escape route. With each passing second, more of the bulbs folded in on themselves, allowing more vines to fill the lumen. Only then did we realize that the entire passage was about to close up. Either we breached the surface immediately, or we'd get entangled in the flesh-bound organism. Panic rising within us, we quickly swam for the surface, which was still some distance away. All the while, the vines grew thicker and more numerous, moving toward us at impressive speeds. Andrew led first, glancing back at us to make sure we hadn't fallen behind, but in doing so, he hadn't noticed vines appearing directly in front of him. Too slow to react, he was grabbed by the appendage, which subsequently started wrapping itself around his shoulder. He pulled his knife out and swiftly slashed through the vine, to which the rest of them responded by sending dozens, all of which wrapped around Andrew. I rushed over to him, pulling out my own knife, slashing at the flesh, but there were just too many of them. And before long, I too was trapped in the entanglement, immediately immobilized by the vine's surprising strength. Maya remained as the sole free diver, but the vines were quickly reaching for her too. One of them managed to get a hold of her head, ripping out her mouthpiece in the process, which vanished in the chaos. Running out of air, Maya panicked as she desperately searched for it on the floor, but it was no use. Using the last of my mobility, I pointed to the surface, signaling for her to leave us behind and save herself. She locked eyes with me, shaking her head, and started pulling on the vines with her bare hands as they slowly tried to squeeze the life from us. It was futile. Sorrow filling her eyes, Maya was left with no choice but to rush for the surface, not knowing if the air above could even sustain human life. The tendrils wrapped tighter around us, some starting to stab through the suit, digging into my flesh. I wanted to scream, but I fought to keep my mouthpiece in place, lest I drown in the hellscape I'd voluntarily entered. But with the pressure building up around me, the pain growing in intensity, I felt myself fading away. The last thing I saw before finally losing consciousness was Maya escaping up into the air pocket, the only one not ensnared. All that would follow was eternal darkness. It's an odd sensation to feel your life slipping away. I had expected flashes to appear before my eyes, filled with highlights and mistakes from a life gone by, but instead, I was left with only a single thought occupying my fading mind. Had I chosen the right way to die, or should I have spit out my mouthpiece and let the cold water take over my body? As a diver, I was well acquainted with the concept of drowning, and as horrific as the idea might be, it's a risk you take each and every time you dive beneath the ocean's surface. You're trapped underwater, knowing that the minuscule amount of air left in your lungs amounts to the very last breath you'll ever take. Even should you welcome your premature death, your body fights it with all its instincts, down to the very last second. It refuses to let you inhale, tensing up to prevent water from entering your lungs. You start to notice the oxygen in your blood diminishing, replacing by an unrelenting feeling of sheer panic as your muscles start to burn and your mind turns hazy. Little by little, you fade into the darkness, left only with the knowledge that you're about to die. Then, as you finally fade into an unconscious haven, the true nightmare begins. Your body falls back in pure instinct, making one last attempt at gasping for air, except there is none to be found. You open your mouth, pulling in the icy water encasing your body, knowing fully well that it will only hurt you more. This is the point where your experience might differ, as 1 in 10 people react violently to the water entering their bodies. As soon as it hits your larynx, it closes up, refusing to let neither air nor water inside. Those are the people that suffocate, drowning without a single drop of water touching their lungs. The remaining 9 in 10 people suffer a different fate, allowing water to wash inside, causing an immense feeling of burning on every surface the water touches. A jolt of adrenaline is released, your body's way of begging for you to keep fighting the inevitable death, and only then are you finally allowed to slip away, sinking into unknown depths as your body ceases to function. Burdened with this intimate knowledge of drowning, I had chosen to keep my mouthpiece, allowing my death to come from ensnarement. Had I made the right choice? Death should have already taken hold of me, but yet my spirit remained firmly locked within my body. I opened my eyes, not sure how much time had passed, wondering how I hadn't yet succumbed to my captor. The passage had long since fallen dark in lieu of the glowing bulbs, leaving only the beam from the flashlight to light up the wall before me, where a dozen vines floated in the water, content to have caught its prey. A shadow appeared before the beam, one not recognizable by my tired eyes. It was only when it came right up to my face before I realized it was Maya. At first, I thought I was dreaming, my dying mind hallucinating an impossible rescue, but there she hung, wearing a mouthpiece, cutting me from my entanglement. Several of the vines had already dug themselves into my body, and though Maya tried to pull them out, they refused to budge. She could only cut them away, leaving their stems still ingrained in my body. How she managed to extract me without waking up more of the appendages, I didn't know, but she had managed to free both me and Andrew, getting both of us up into the air pocket above.
It's safe. You can breathe here,
she said as she pulled out her mouthpiece. We had been pulled up into an air-filled chamber, covered in a much denser set of the same fleshy growths. Maya stepped between them, making sure not to touch their hostile appendages, but without water surrounding them, they appeared more docile, making a few attempts at latching onto us. How did you... I began to ask, not needing to finish the question before Maya gestured to an air-filled passage extending deeper into the air pocket. Before it lay pieces of diving equipment, identical to ours. It was David's, but the man himself was nowhere to be seen.
It was fused with the vines. I had to cut it all out. I just took his mouthpiece and came back for you.
What about David?
Maya shook her head.
I don't know. But it doesn't matter anymore.
What do you mean?
It took me over an hour to get you loose. Even if we find David, we won't have enough air to get back to the surface. We're trapped.
I glanced at my residual pressure gauge, and sure enough, only a fourth of the gas remained. Andrew confirmed. None of us had the faintest chance of getting back to the surface. We were starting to realize that though we had survived the attack, we'd been tossed into a different kind of tomb altogether.
What about the crew? David clearly made it up here. He might have followed the path to another exit.
Though hopeful, it wouldn't be a likely situation, seeing as we hadn't died immediately from decompression. The air held the same atmospheric pressure as the water, which meant the air inside the cave had no connection to the air on the surface. The question was, where did the oxygen come from, and how long would it last?
I don't know where it leads. I was busy saving your sorry asses.
An act I greatly appreciate, but...
Andrew started, only to be cut off by a pained groan. What's wrong?
The vines.
He said, inspecting his wounds. There were large holes covering his suit where the vines had penetrated, but despite the many wounds, there was a surprising lack of blood. Upon closer inspection, we realized that each hole still had pieces of the organism stuck inside, seeming to have fused with the surrounding skin. Checking my own body, I realized that I too had patches of flesh that didn't belong to me, fused to my skin. What the hell is this shit? I asked. Andrew didn't respond, seemingly intrigued by the injuries we'd sustained.
So that's how it is.
He muttered to himself. What was that? I asked, but got no response. We're alive. Let's focus on that, I said. Andrew just nodded, unbothered by the strange growths attached to his body.
So, do we have a plan?
Not really. But we also don't have any options.
Except for following the cave. We glanced at David's abandoned diving equipment, wondering why he'd left it all behind. If the man had attempted to traverse the cave, the question remained how far it extended. Whatever the case, it was our best and only possibility, and though our chances of survival remained slim, we clung on to that hope for dear life. I attached the safety line from my suit, letting my camera transmit the last bit of footage before going dark. Though not improving our chances, I felt slightly better knowing that the surface crew knew what had happened to us. At least our story would exist to be told, and it might prevent others from meeting the same tragic fate as us.
Well, here goes nothing. Who wants to go first?
With nothing more than our flashlight to guide our path, I took the first steps into the dark passage. Like the waterlogged tunnels below, the walls and floor were covered in the flesh-bound growths, ready to ensnare us by the smallest provocation. Though more docile above water, we refrained from coming into contact with them. Maya pushed her way past me, quickly assessing the many wounds that covered my body.
You really thought I'd let you go first? You're a mess, both of you, in fact. I'm taking the lead on this one.
I glanced back at Andrew, who seemed surprisingly content with the idea of someone else leading the charge. He just nodded in agreement, rubbing the foreign flesh fused to his body. A knot formed in my stomach as soon as we entered the passage, only to immediately realize that it sloped downwards, as we were forced further down into the abyss. With no way of knowing the exact gas content of our surroundings, we had no way of knowing how the increase in pressure would affect us. Maya led the group with purpose, marching on without hesitation into the deeper sections of the passage. Though narrow, it was tall enough for the ceiling to be obscured in darkness. Andrew moved at a slower pace, purposefully falling behind to get a moment alone with me, so that he could ask about our shared experience in the entanglement.
Does it hurt?
I hadn't thought about it since we started walking, but as I focused on it, I realized that the immense aching I'd felt less than an hour prior had completely vanished. Actually, it doesn't. I let out, surprised.
But you feel something, don't you?
Puzzled at first, I tried to focus on any changes in my body. Only then did I realize just how healthy I actually felt. Despite the many cuts, stabs, and bruises, I didn't feel wounded. Quite the opposite. I felt stronger than usual, amped up like my body was running on pure adrenaline, but without the accompanying jitter. I just stared back at Andrew, speechless, to which he responded with a subtle smirk.
Interesting, huh?
Interesting isn't exactly the word I'd use. But Andrew didn't stop there. He seemed almost gleeful to be infected by the foreign tissue, as if he held answers that I wasn't privy to. It creeped me out, but I couldn't deny the physical comfort I felt with the creature existing within me, as much as the thought itself disgusted me.
What do you remember from the entanglement?
I don't know. I passed out. I only woke up when Maya had freed me.
I didn't.
Andrew said, almost proud.
I was awake for the whole thing.
What did you see? I finally caved and asked. He shot me a smile, one with genuine happiness, rid of all malice.
Something beautiful.
What was it? He'd gotten me genuinely curious, with a side of anxiety prevalent in my chest. The way he spoke just felt off. It lacked the fear that should have been present considering the dangers we were in.
If I told you that, Rick, you wouldn't believe it. But once you see it for yourself, you'll understand what I mean.
With that cryptic statement, Maya had noticed our hushed conversation and paused to interact.
What are you two on about?
Nothing. I automatically responded, worried she'd think we'd gone mad. A question I was starting to ask myself.
Well, save your breaths for walking. We don't know how much oxygen this place has.
Fair enough,
Andrew said, continuing to appear unbothered by the situation we found ourselves in. We must have walked in silence for half an hour before the cave finally opened up into another large chamber. Like the rest, the floor, walls, and ceiling were covered in small growths, interspersed with small, dimly lit plants. In the middle of the room lay another bizarre structure, a meat flower stretching up with flaps of flesh and a crown of tendrils. Something was occupying its middle, an object we'd only recognize once we got closer. It was David, lying lifeless in the middle, his body dissected and hardly recognizable.
Oh, God!
Maya let out, rushing to his side. I joined quickly after, but Andrew remained in the back, staring at the remnants of what had once been his colleague, showing no form of distress. He's dead, I let out, stating the obvious. His body had been torn to pieces, most of his face removed and his innards absorbed by the fleshy structures. Several of the appendages appeared to have dug into his body, as if trying to connect with him. In the process, he had bled out, at which point his body had been mostly digested and absorbed by the organism. There was nothing left to be done for him.
What the hell is this place?
Maya cried. Having sensed our presence, the tendrils still attached to David's body started to let go. At first, we didn't notice, distracted by the loss of our friend, but sooner had they let go than they'd chosen new targets. With Maya being the closest to David's remains, she'd become the primary object of their desires. It was a fact I realized all too late as the tendril struck at her, just barely missing as Andrew jumped in to pull her away.
Watch it!
He yelled as he pulled her to the floor with him, just nearly dodging the appendages. Maya, while still gasping for air in panic, remained unharmed.
You alright?
He asked as he lifted her back to her feet.
Yeah,
She said in shock.
thank you, Andrew.
Don't mention it.
I remained by the strange growth in the middle of the room, staring at the wriggling flesh that had tried to murder Maya, yet had left me be. Andrew might have saved her, but had made no attempt at removing me from the situation, as if he knew only Maya would be at risk. To test the theory, and in a moment of profoundly stupid bravery, I took a step closer to the tendrils. With that, they stopped wriggling, just turning to me as if inspecting my body. I moved closer, allowing them to get a better grasp of who and what I was. They seemed oddly interested in the parts fused to my body, carefully inching closer without striking out violently.
Rick, get away from them!
Maya yelled, moving to physically remove me, only to be held back by Andrew.
Let me go!
No. He needs to do this.
Andrew explained confidently. But their argument didn't even faze me. I was too hypnotized by the tendrils before me. I felt drawn to them, connected by an unseen force, as if letting them touch me was my one true destiny.
Rick! Rick!
Maya kept yelling, punching Andrew to no avail.
He'll be fine. Trust me.
Then it connected, attaching itself from the cut wounds still attached to my wounds from the entanglement. Within an instant, I felt my mind dissolve from my body, leaving it behind as I entered an entirely new experience of life itself. Gone were the physical boundaries of my human form, joining forces with the organism within the cave. I could feel every inch of the cave around me, see through my eyes on the wall, each harvested from those unfortunate enough to fall victim to the vines. Miles and miles of twists and turns, hidden below the entirety of Darwell Woods, stretching far beyond. It was all there for me to see. So much death, so much life, a fragile equilibrium under the threat of an unknown, evil entity so far away. In the span of just seconds, I saw thousands of images of thousands of places, all within the cave, entire ecosystems existing in a parasitic symbiosis. Death and life merged to one, and then I saw the depths, the same pit I had seen in the underwater chamber, extending endlessly far into an infinite abyss. Down there, even I had no sensation. Yet there was something else, unknown, existing in the depths. The same blue lights I saw before, and they terrified me to my very core. My mind moved back to the air-filled caves, spiraling down, observing each inch in mere seconds, and amidst it all, I saw the child, hidden in the deepest pit of the cave, trapped in the fleshy growths. That's where my domain ended. A part of the hybrid I stood no chance of accessing, controlled by a creature far stronger, more ancient than anything known to man. But despite it all, I knew exactly where to find it. As abruptly as the journey had begun, I felt my mind retract into my body. The tendrils detached, and I fell, powerless on the floor, gasping for air.
Welcome back.
Andrew said, not surprised in the slightest. I saw him. I managed to get out between breaths.
What? Who?
The boy. He's alive.
Where is he?
The center. He's at the center. I let out, still struggling to breathe. Confused, Maya looked to Andrew for answers, but even he didn't seem certain.
What's he talking about?
I actually have no idea.
Once I'd gotten my breath back, Andrew and Maya helped me to my feet. It took a while, but I slowly started to feel at home in my own body, as if the excursion through the flesh had been nothing but a dream, but only leaving hidden knowledge not meant for mankind. Is this what you meant? I asked Andrew. Is this what you saw in the entanglement? He shook his head.
What I saw was a mere glimpse compared to you. You've been chosen.
Chosen for what? I asked, annoyed at the constant riddles.
I have absolutely no idea. That is a journey for you alone to find out.
I'm not here to find myself, Andrew. I'm here to save that kid. I saw him. I know where he is.
How is that even possible?
I don't know. It's like these things showed me. I could feel everything while connected. It was weird.
And you can lead us to the center.
I can.
What are we waiting for? Lead the way.
Andrew went on, just a tad too enthusiastic. Nevertheless, we started moving. With a freshly printed map of the place ingrained into my own mind, I knew each twist and turn we had to follow to reach our destination. It was a trek that would take hours, down to extreme depths that we might not be able to withstand, but we had to try. I took the lead, unnaturally energized by the connection I'd felt. Andrew was just as excited, walking by my side, while Maya grew weaker, the first to experience the signs of increased pressure. Why and how Andrew and I could withstand it was only explained by the fused growths to our body.
What did it feel like?
Andrew asked once we'd gotten ahead of Maya.
Strange,
I said, not wishing to delve into the subject any further.
Do you understand it now? What this place is?
I don't care what this place is. All I care about is getting that kid and getting the hell out of here.
Andrew paused, staring at me with a semblance of shock in his eyes.
Are you sure you want to do that, Rick?
Do what?
Leave. Because I don't think you do. I think you understand the importance of this place. And having seen what you saw, there's no going back. You are one with this place. Just like me.
Though I couldn't understand what he meant, I did understand exactly how he felt. Since escaping the clutches of the entanglement, I had lost all sense of fear of the place we stood within. I felt at home, as if I finally existed in a place I belonged. But it was a feeling I couldn't accept, and one I had to push aside if I wanted to stand any chance of saving the child.
Did you know that would happen to me when you let me connect with the tendrils? Or did you just let me dive in to see what would happen?
You already know the answer to that.
Then why pull Maya away? Hell, why didn't you dive in yourself?
Because Maya would have died, and I wasn't chosen. But you already knew that. Why are you trying so hard to deny yourself this? Why are you so desperate to leave?
Andrew argued. Before I could answer that question, Maya interjected.
I know I'm slow, but I'm not deaf or stupid. So I have to ask, have you fucking lost your mind? You want us to stay down here?
Andrew turned to her, sighing carefully before answering the question.
I'm not asking you to stay, Maya. And once we reach the center, you have my word. I'll do everything in my power to get you back home. But I'm staying. And I think Rick will too once he comes to his senses.
Is he serious?
Maya asked me, gesturing to Andrew.
I don't know what he is, but I'm not staying in this hellscape. Now, stop with the chatter. I don't want to hear another word,
I ordered. Andrew lifted his hands in defeat, keeping his mouth shut. With peace finally present in the cave, we could proceed further into the depths. As we walked, I'd glanced down at my depth gauge, which rapidly counted up to well over 500 feet. At those depths, any gas resembling trimix would have caused severe narcosis, which meant the gas filling the cave must have been closer to helionix. But with our voices not taking on the comedically high pitch caused by helium inhalation, the composition remained unknown, able to keep us alive despite the pressure. But with Maya growing weaker, the trip was taking far longer than estimated. The only bright side was that it gave us time to think and observe our morbid surroundings. I started noticing pieces of human and animal anatomy spread across the walls. Eyes, ears, organs, vessels, all seemingly extracted as spare parts for the cave wall.
Is that a gas tank?
Maya asked as she noticed a bit of metal sticking out from the wall, partially submerged beneath the flesh.
Looks like it, but it's a model from several decades ago.
1974 to be exact.
Andrew chimed in, pointing out some text written on its side.
So I guess we're not the first ones down here.
But hopefully the last,
I said, hoping to end the discussion.
Let's keep moving.
With the increasing depth, the growths on the wall grew thicker, covering every inch of visible surface. It squished beneath our feet as we progressed, periodically trying to snatch onto Maya while leaving Andrew and me alone. We'd been integrated into the symbiotic system, recognized as part of the cave, but Maya still hadn't been connected, a process she stood no chance to survive.
Hold on a moment.
Maya said, out of breath. The pressure was getting to her, a process she was desperately trying to fight without success. She sat down on the least dense part of the cave, trying to catch her breath as the vines reached up to grab her.
How far is it to the center?
Andrew asked, showing genuine concern towards Maya's condition.
This passage takes us straight to the center, only a 15-minute walk left.
I explained, gesturing to one of the many tunnels in the wall.
And that's where we'll find the kid?
I nodded.
What exactly are you planning to do when you find him?
What do you mean?
You want to free him, right? How do you intend to achieve that, seeing as he's been merged with the flesh, reaching a stage far beyond whatever happened to us in the water?
We'll use Maya's knife to cut him loose. Worked for us. Andrew sighed, not convinced of my plan.
I'm not sure I can let you do that, Rick.
What the fuck are you on about?
Do you really not see what this place is after all this time? If you free the boy without a replacement, everything in these caves is going to die.
I locked eyes with the man, wondering if the last bit of humanity he held onto had vanished from his soul.
Let it die then,
I said as coldly as I could. Maya struggled to get back on her feet, discomforted by the conversation. I let her get behind me, getting ready to proceed into the cave before Andrew kept the argument going.
I won't let you do it. I just can't.
Well, fuck you, Andrew. Stay as long as you want, but we're saving the kid and getting the hell out of here.
I turned my back to him in protest, proceeding deeper into the cave. I made sure to let Maya get some headway, but as I took my first step into the narrower passage, I felt a heavy hit to the back of my head. Sent pummeling to the ground, I was dazed by a newly formed wound on my head. I turned around on the ground, met by Andrew standing above me with a knife in his hand. He'd hit me with its handle, attempting to stop me without actually murdering me.
I thought you dropped that in the cave,
I said, more surprised than afraid.
David didn't need his anymore. So, I got a spare.
Reacting quickly, Maya launched at Andrew, punching him in the face. Though it connected, the punch barely moved him. He just remained in place while Maya threw another punch, one that did little due to her weakened state.
There's no need for that,
he said calmly, but she struck again, this time getting blocked. Andrew grabbed Maya by her neck, pushing her against the cave wall, covered in flesh. Upon making contact, dozens of vines started to wrap around her, causing her to sink into the wall, only until her head was visible. All the while, she struggled to get free to no avail.
Relax, Maya. They won't hurt you. I made sure of that. I promised to get you out of here once we reach the center, and I'm a man of my word. I won't let anything down here hurt you. But I can't let Rick destroy this place.
Leaving her entangled in the wall, he approached me, now wielding his knife with intent to kill. He held the knife close to my chest, bending down on one knee next to me.
If this place dies,
he began, but it was a sentence I didn't let him finish. Instead, I kicked him in his weakened knee, instantly sending him groaning to the ground. Still dazed, I got to my feet, jumping on top of him to stop him from rising. Though much larger than I, he was in too much pain to fight back. Punching him in the nose, I managed to get him to drop the knife. For the next few seconds, we rolled around on the ground while I tried to get the upper hand. But once the shock from the pain had worn off, Andrew quickly regained control. He punched me in the face a couple of times before diving for the knife on the ground.
I don't want to hurt you, Rick. But I will if I have to,
Andrew said, pointing the knife back at me. I charged at him again, grabbing onto his knife-wielding arm. I tried to tear it from his hand, but he wouldn't let go.
Last chance!
He groaned in the struggle, but I refused to let up. He started pushing it towards me, slowly but certainly inching its way towards my guts. I felt the blade tear through the suit and cut into my skin. The adrenaline coursing through my veins wasn't enough to fight the shock of having a piece of metal stabbing through me. I felt my grip on Andrew's arm weaken, and before long, I fell limply to the ground, unable to fight on. He loomed over me as I pressed against my wound, feeling the warmth of my own blood pour down my abdomen as I slowly bled out.
I didn't want this, but you left me no choice.
Fuck you!
I shot back, using what little remained of my strength. My vision started to blur, and the pain just kept worsening. I felt the ground beneath me start to move, tiny veins pulling their way up my body. A sharp shock shot through me, and I felt the appendages dig their way into my wound. I screamed in agony, but alongside the pain, I felt something odd begin to take hold around me. I could feel the room, each and every tendril. I waited, almost hoping for Andrew to finish the job by slitting my throat, but he seemed frozen. "Stop it!" he let out. I tried to focus my vision, just barely seeing Andrew getting ensnared by the growths in the cave. They wrapped tightly around his legs, growing upwards at impressive speeds. Along the way, they dug themselves into his flesh, causing him to scream. He fell to his knees, allowing further growths to dig themselves into his torso, tearing him apart from the inside. His cries turned to gargles as blood filled his lungs, and within seconds, he had been reduced to a pile of mangled meat, fusing with the cave walls.
Rick!
I heard Maya yell, the wall around her retracting as she was freed. Then the tendrils released from my wound, pulling quietly back into the ground, leaving me with a gaping wound in my abdomen. I had been spared, even saved by the same monstrosity we'd been fighting, but it was a rescue that would be short-lived, as blood continued to pour onto the ground.
Oh, my God!
She let out as she realized how badly I was injured. "I'm fine," I lied. "Help me up." Trying to conceal the pain I was in, I let Maya pull me up. Before us lay an unrecognizable mess of human remains that had once been Andrew. I bent down, muttering a few profanities as I picked up the blood-covered knife.
The cave,
She began, trying to comprehend what had just happened.
Why would it save you?
"I don't know, but we have to keep moving. We don't have much time. Come on, it's not far." Weak but unwilling to surrender, we proceeded through the last set of tunnels toward the heart of the cave. The passage twisted and turned before finally ending in a massive chamber lit up by thousands of glowing plants. In the middle stood a large, flesh-bound monolith, pulsating akin to a beating heart. At its base hung the small body of a young boy, fused with the flesh. No sooner had we entered than I fell to my knees, weakened by the blood loss. I struggled to get back up, noticing the connection I had once felt to the cave start to fade. In the presence of a new, far stronger being, I was being discarded.
Is he alive?
I nodded, though appearing dead, I had felt his life surging through the flesh. What remained was only the question of how to release him.
What now?
"We'll cut him free," I said. As I uttered those words, the ground beneath us abruptly woke to life, wrapping around us in an instant. We tried to fight it, but in our collective weakened state, we didn't stand a chance. After all this, we'd reached the end, only to be effortlessly neutralized.
Do not touch the child.
What the hell was that?
I am the warden of this domain. You do not belong here.
Let us go!
Maya argued as the ground started swallowing her knife.
Let you go. You have no power here. With what can you bargain?
The child in the flesh spoke in unison with the walls, his tiny voice barely present. I stopped fighting, knowing any form of protest would be futile.
But this one is different. It has been assimilated, yet it does not understand.
The warden said, referring to me. While I couldn't understand what he meant, the more flesh wrapped around us, the more I could start to feel the cave's skin within my mind again, its vast intelligence, its emotions, its memories. "What is this place?" I asked, sounding surprisingly calm.
This is the bastion of life.
The warden explained matter-of-factly.
You call this life? All the people that have been killed, and for what? We saw the bodies!
Killed?
Your feeble concept of morality won't serve your cause down here. Those dead were the sacrifices needed to keep the depths quiet. We required their flesh. We required their knowledge.
The emotions within the being were foreign, most of them not following concepts known to mankind, and though the sensation overwhelmed me, one emotion stood above all, prominent in each corner of the cave. Fear. Why are you afraid?
We fear the lights.
What lights? These plants?
We fear the lights in the depths, looming beneath us, and soon they will rise.
A flash of the waterlogged chamber emerged in my mind, filled with blue lights hanging hundreds of feet below. Even when connected to the flesh, I could not access that region of the cave, as if it was a separate entity to the organism itself. But what they are and why the warden feared it remained an unanswered question. But with time running out and the life slowly draining from my body, my thoughts turned to the child and how we could free him. The warden needed a suitable body to keep the place alive, as Andrew had said, and each life taken in the name of the cave had been to find one strong enough to sustain the place without perishing. Those who were incompatible had only been absorbed as spare parts, victims of a dire necessity masked as evil. Then I realized why the cave had saved me over Andrew, because my connection to the place stood unparalleled. I was chosen. With that realization, I felt the flesh loosen around me. I fell to the ground, free, as did Maya. She gasped for air, finally able to take a deep breath, free of the constraints.
Why did you let us go?
She asked, surprised, but it was a question I already knew the answer to.
Rick?
I stared at the child, knowing what choice I had to make. Someone had to take his place, and the person could only be me. If I gave myself to the cave, it would let the child go. Maya, I need you to get the kid out of here.
But I don't... What's going on?
I'm staying.
Are you insane? You can't!
It's the only way the warden will let the child go. Someone has to take him back home.
I don't even know how to get back out.
Don't worry about that. This place will show you the way. Tears filled her eyes, both from fear and sorrow.
I can't just leave you.
I gestured to my wound. I wouldn't make it back even if I wanted to. In the end, Andrew had gotten exactly what he wanted. I was staying. I reached out to hug Maya, whispering that it would be all right. She didn't respond. She just held on to me in doubt. For a while, we stood in embrace before the warden spoke up for the last time.
This place can sustain your mind, but your body will perish. Be quick before that too is lost.
The flesh loosened around the boy, letting him fall limply to the ground. Where the tendrils had been fused, mere marks remained. He was unconscious, but definitely alive. Feeling my body surrender under its own weight, I stumbled over to the fleshy monolith, grabbing onto it as I gave Maya one last glance. Then I connected, my body slowly sinking into the organism, becoming one with it. With that, I gained full control. I could open a path back to the entrance. I could keep them both alive as they were transported to the surface. Maya lifted up the boy, looking me in the eye as my body started to disintegrate. In only a minute, the person I had once been would be fused with all those lost in the cave. But it was something I could gladly sacrifice, knowing they were getting back home. Using the last of my voice, I just asked Maya to tell my story, to let the world know that parts of me still exist, and to leave this place alone. After all, the evil committed was little more than an act of desperation to keep a far greater threat from emerging from the depths. But even though I am staying back to fight an unknown enemy, I have a feeling this nightmare is far from over. I will do my best, but a time will come where this place will fall, and once it does, the world as you know it
will cease to exist.
It started 3 months ago, the dark spots in the water. I'm residing at my seaside cottage, my own personal getaway that I purchased 3 years ago. The back deck looks out on the Sound, along the shore of the Outer Banks in Northern Carolina. It's always been one of my favorite vacation locations, and when I published my 3rd book last year, the royalties allowed me to buy this cottage. I don't have any neighbors. I specifically wanted it that way. I planned to write my 4th book here and wanted to ensure peace and quiet while I worked away at it. There's a little pier that stretches out into the Sound from beneath my deck. The sound of the water gently slapping against the wood stimulates my creative mind like nothing else can. I was sitting on the dock a couple of days ago when I noticed it for the first time. The dark spots in the water. They were circular and about 4 feet in circumference. I counted 4 of them, about 20 feet from where I stood at the end of the pier. The sun was setting, strips of blank cloud colored by scars of brilliant soft orange. The water caught the light and made it sparkle, a twinkling of stars on the gentle surface. Except for the circles of black, those patches seemed to absorb the light, sucking it down into itself. I was curious, and I speculated that maybe the water was just deeper in those spots. I sipped my glass of water at the end of the pier, the ice clinking against the rim like muffled bells. I didn't know what to make of my discovery. Instead of dwelling on it any longer, I went inside, determined to finish another page of my book before I went to bed. Outside, the water filled with 2 more dark spots. The next day, the sky filled with angry storm clouds, and I sat by the big bay window, clacking away at my keyboard as the rain crashed into the ocean before me. Most people don't like rainy days, but as a writer, I feel they are my most productive. The cozy atmosphere, the steady pitter-patter of rain, the rolling thunder, all these things spark my creativity, and the words just come pouring out like the water from the clouds above. I was watching the waves, circling the next scene of my book and thinking, when I spotted the dark circles again. One of them was right at the end of the pier, another 5 spread around it. I idly tapped my finger against my desk, watching them. They had moved since yesterday. I discarded my theory of depth change and instead wondered if it was a school of fish. It didn't explain the way they sucked in the light, but I wasn't an expert on the ocean and its many workings. I stood up, allowing myself a brief break from my work, and went to the door. I opened it, the overhang shielding me from the rain, and breathed in the wet air. The air was fresh, smelling of new rain and ocean salt. I breathed it in and winced, the wind suddenly carrying a new odor, something foul and sharp, burning my nose with its repulsive aroma. I covered my face with a hand, trying not to gag. It was sharp, like vinegar almost, and I felt my eyes water. I slammed the door closed and retreated back inside. I went to my desk and took a seat, wiping the remains of the smell from my nose. I looked out into the water. The dark patches of water had moved closer. That night I couldn't sleep. I had woken only an hour after going to bed and couldn't will my mind back into sweet slumber. I went to my back deck and stood in the darkness, watching the water, letting the repetitive lapping of waves slow my mind. It was something I had done before when I couldn't sleep, my mind still buzzing with ideas and worries. The wind whipped my hair across my face, a warm breeze filled with ocean scents. The moon spilled its white light onto the water and lit the tiny peaks of rolling waves. I listened to them smack against the pier before me and breathed in the atmosphere. That's when I heard a humming. At first I thought it was just the wind, but as I trained my ears, I realized it was coming from the water. It was soft, but there was a definite melody to the low rise of deep vocals. It almost sounded like chanting. My eyes settled over the dark patches of water. I didn't even notice them there in the night, but when I actually looked, I could see the light of the moon around the edge of their murky perimeter, but no light filled the center. Instead, it remained as black as the deepest corners of space. The humming was definitely coming from the ebony patches of still water. Something about the ominous sound chilled me to the bone. A slow, sad tune that carried in the wind with haunting purpose. It raised the hair on the back of my neck, and I leaned down over the railing to get a better look. The circles were close to the wooden edge of my house, where the water met a wall just below my deck. The pier stretched out from that wall, resting on the surface of the sound like a red carpet. I took the steps down my porch and walked under the deck to the pier. My bare feet patted across the wood, and the sound of humming became more pronounced. I looked to my right and saw a few of the circles slowly moving back and forth like they were being carried on the tide. What the hell? I thought, staring out. And that's when something stirred the surface of the water. It came with a sudden splash and a slice of white froth. In the center of each circle, something emerged for a split second. It was so sudden and the darkness so deep that I couldn't see what it was, but it scared me half to death. It had all happened seamlessly and in sync. At the exact same moment, they all had mirrored the exact same action. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know if I was dealing with animals or nature, but I knew I was suddenly feeling very uncomfortable. I raced back to the deck, my ears filling with the strange, sad humming. As I was about to go back inside, I was slammed with the awful stench again. I retched as the wind carried it down my throat and felt my eyes tear up. I grabbed the door and pulled it open, desperate to get away from the horrific smell. I stumbled inside and slammed the door. I stood against it, breathing heavily. Then I heard something heavy thunk onto the pier outside. It came in a rush of water and weight, a loud exclamation in the night. Eyes widening, I turned and looked out the sliding glass door. In the moonlight, I saw the source of the dark circles. It stemmed from a huge conch shell, the walls of its curling spiral so dark it made the night glow around it. Worming out of the opening was a long coil of pink flesh, shining with dripping water. It was thick and oozing, like an infected tongue, and at the end of its 2-foot span was the torso of a person. It grew out of the pulsing, shining muscle, and its face was bloated and waterlogged. Its eyes were black, and a smile riped up its face like a deep gash on its noseless face. And it was humming. The notes carried in the night air filled me with crippling dread. It was a song of death, a prelude of carnage. It pulled itself along the pier towards my house on long, fingerless slabs of squirming flesh. They smacked wetly along the wood as it dragged its huge shell behind it. The grating sound screeching my ears. Even from behind the door, I could smell the creature. It was the same awful, reeking plague I had smelled earlier. As I watched in horror, another one pulled itself out of the water, humming and grinning, hoisting its giant shell out of the water like the hull of a ship. Water spilled over the pier in great waves as it followed the first one. The humming continued, gaining in volume, and I suddenly was overcome with the urge to just stand and listen. The notes churned my stomach, but I had an unexplainable urge to wait for the creatures to reach me. Suddenly, the horror of the situation crashed down around me like a wave at high tide. I snapped out of my trance and slammed my hands over my ears. I couldn't let them get to me. I had to get away. If they reached me, I knew I wouldn't be alive come morning. I didn't know what these things were or what they wanted, but the terror rose like bile in my throat. I grabbed my car keys as another one of them pulled itself up the barrier beneath my house. I could hear it flopping onto the strip of sand beneath my deck, and I knew I didn't have long. I practically kicked the front door open and raced to my car. I jammed the key into the lock and twisted, throwing the door open. I heard something crash from inside and realized that the first one had just broken in. The thought of the monster pulling itself through my house sent a bolt of adrenaline coursing through me. I dove into the car and started it, slamming the gear into reverse. I turned on my headlights and my heart thundered in my chest. One of them was in the open doorway, its worm-like arms sliding along its frame. It was grinning at me, a deep hum echoing towards me. For a split second, I almost pulled back into the driveway, but the fresh adrenaline was enough to force reason upon my confused mind. I gunned the engine and raced towards town. To this day, I have no idea what those things were. I told the police and the local wildlife rangers about my experience, but they don't believe me. To them, I'm just a new resident, unused to the ways of the ocean. I put the house up for sale and haven't returned to it since. I don't dare. I tried talking to the local fishermen about the dark circles in the water, but they cut me off as soon as I mentioned them. They told me I shouldn't talk about such things, hushing me with a quick wave of their hand. They get a look in their eyes that scares me, but also tells me that I'm not insane. I don't know what I've witnessed, what those creatures were or what they wanted. Just thinking about it terrifies me. I know one thing, though. I'm never going near the ocean again. Something tells me I'd hear humming. Something tells me those creatures would return to catch the one that got away. The ocean has its silent caves, deep, deep, quiet, and alone. Though there be fury on the waves, beneath them there is none. Over the course of the last few weeks of training, I had memorized nearly every facet of the Tuscany, every dial and every readout, every knob and screen and nuance of structure, and the quality of the personal submarine's craftsmanship never ceased to astound me. It was a remarkable feat of engineering, this little beast, designed with such care that even the equipment on the hull could withstand more water pressure than the sea could muster up at any achievable depth. It was my Pegasus, my Trojan horse, my very own Apollo 11, and inside this matrix of layered syntactic foam, I would follow the ballast to the gratuitous and unexplored depths of Higgins Maw. I began the separation sequence, and the deep diver fell from the escort and dipped beneath the surface of the Pacific with silence and grace and a few knots of speed. And then I was consumed in a whole new world, albeit one I'd frequented, that of the sea. Schools of fish swam by me, and when their cloud passed through a sunbeam, it glinted silver, and beneath them swam rays that rolled their wings to the beat of the current, and out in the rocks crawled the crustaceans and sat the plant life that spruced up all the whitewashed stones there like holiday ornaments. But I had an appointment to keep, and the oxygen tank was a demanding clock, so I dove right on past the old reef and out into the open waters where the seabed couldn't be seen for many, many miles yet. The Maw, Reuben had said, 50,000 feet below the surface, Booker. 50,000. Do you know what that means? It means it's a whole hell of a lot deeper than the Challenger abyss. He nodded at that. Are you ready to make history? Was I? I thought I was. I'd prepared for this lonely dive and nothing else for some years now. It was the culmination of a lifetime of work and study in the field, and so tight was its grip on my mind that I often dreamt of it in my sleep, of what I'd find at the bottom and what it would mean, and what monstrous things might take offense to my presence there. No. I shoved that thought aside. Tuscany was all the protection I needed in that regard. It offered technology on the bleeding edge in lieu of a heavy hull, and that was enough to withstand enough water pressure to crush bones beneath skin and inches of steel. What animal had jaws more powerful than the ocean itself at fathom? So I hit the thrusters, and down I went, like a bullet to the pitch. I eyed the depth meter as much as I did the sea. 100 feet, 200. Sharks and turtles and uncountable fish swam past me. 300 feet, 500 feet, 700, 1,000, 1,250, the inverse height of the Empire State Building. 1,500, 16. The water began to blur and grain up and darken as the sunlight struggled to push on through. 2,000, 25, 3,000, 32, where the light no longer shines. And soon, all the light I had to glow the path ahead and down were the lights of the Tuscany. I continued the descent for hours. The pressure meter ticked up in spasmodic bursts, but up it went. Up, soon ticking past the point where the weight of the sea would have crushed the steel of another vessel. 1 mile down, 1.3, 1.6, where even sperm whales hit their lowest dive. I could now claim with confidence that no mammal on Earth was as deep down at that very moment as myself, and still I dove. 2 miles, 2.1, 2.2. The water was as black as space now, except for where the lights of the Tuscany pierced through it, and the thickness of the fluid made it look like ink or oil or some kind of alien sludge that smeared up against the reinforced windows and slimed its way across the hull. Things were tight down there, despite the vastness of it all. Yet, I still dove. 13,000 feet, the abyssal zone. Pressure stands at 11,000 psi. I saw an angler float by, and it was startled by the sheer volume of light spread by the Tuscany that dwarfed its own bioluminescent glow. It swam away, and I dove further. 15,000 feet. 3 miles. 3.1. Now things get interesting. Mankind had visited these depths almost infrequently enough to count the expeditions on a single pair of hands. I was now ranked among an illustrious few explorers, and although I wasn't the first to hit these marks, I'd hit the deepest one yet before this journey was over. I was determined, and I was capable, so I checked the depth chart. 16,281.4 feet, nearly halfway to the world record. The Tuscany continued to dive. 20,000 feet down,